Chapter 150. Sigh. Co. Tying had already stood up. He looked at the entrance of the main hall and shook his head helplessly. This elder Zhao. He secretly cursed Zhao Qingshan for being cunning and unwilling to take risks. Unsealing the vitality sealing finger was risky, but Zhao Qingshan was the chief high official of the public house. If he was not allowed to do it, who else could? He was not confident, and the others were even less so. He was the one with the lowest risk. Big brother, let Chu Li do it, Shao Qi said. Chu Li. Co. Tying was stunned. He sneered. Him? He can undo the vitality sealing finger, Shao Qi said seriously. If it wasn't for him, who would know that second eldest sister was hit by the vitality sealing finger? He can see it, but he might not be able to solve it. Co. Tying said snappily. If he wants to solve it, he'll have to become a grandmaster first. Although Chu Li is an innate master, he can kill a grandmaster. Shao Qi said coldly. Moreover, in terms of inner energy, he's better than a grandmaster. Co. Tying could not help but laugh. Little sister, what kind of magic potion did Chu Li feed you? The difference between a grandmaster and an innate is like heaven and earth. Inner energy surpasses a grandmaster. Hee, how dare you say that? Big brother, do you think I'm spouting nonsense? Shao Qi scoffed. Co. Tying looked at her cold gaze. He opened his mouth and swallowed his words. He lightly coughed and sternly said, All right, even if what you said is true, and he really has such a deep level of inner strength, the key to unsealing the vitality sealing finger is the precise control of inner strength. If there is even the slightest mistake, second sister will lose her life. Shao Qi asked, Does Big Brother think that he was lucky to be able to cultivate the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait? Co. Tying muttered to himself. He had also practiced the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait before, but he had not been able to master it. Although the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait was powerful, it was like a pearl at the peak of a towering mountain. Not everyone could pluck it. For Chu Li to be able to master it, he must have something stronger than him. Shao Qi scoffed. The key to mastering the art of white tiger is the power of one's primordial spirit. Why is Chu Li able to read people's minds? Why can I read people's minds? It's because his primordial spirit is far superior to ordinary people. Are you saying that his control over inner energy is more precise? Co. Tying frowned and asked. Shao Qi said slowly, Do you think I'll treat second eldest sister's life as a game? You're not using Elder Zhao, but Chu Li? Just because Chu Li is my man? That's true. Co. Tying said thoughtfully. He believed in third younger sister's feelings for second younger sister, and he also believed that third younger sister had always been fair and would not be biased. Although he thought too highly of Chu Li was indeed not an ordinary talent. He was worthy of his attention. However, he was conservative in nature, so he could not ignore Chu Li's age. The accumulation of time was too important. There was a world of difference between a 10-year-old spirit herb and a 100-year-old spirit herb. There was no shortcut. It was the same for humans. Experience and wisdom needed to be accumulated over time. But Co. Tying sighed. It was rational. Since third younger sister strongly recommended Chu Li, there must be something good about him. Emotionally, Zhao Qingshan felt that Chu Li was too impulsive and unreliable. Zhao Qingshan tried every possible way to reject Chu Li, but Chu Li insisted on saving third younger sister's life at all costs. Chu Li had a good heart. However, emotional impulses could easily ruin things. Once something unexpected happened, it would be very difficult to think calmly and find a way to salvage the situation. Co. Qi said, Big brother, do we have a better choice now? Elder Zhao will not agree anyway. Co. Tying remained silent. Xiao Qi did not rush him. She just watched quietly. The morning sun shone on the hall, making it bright and gentle. The birds outside were chirping incessantly, making Xiao Tying a little annoyed. Time passed unknowingly. Xiao Qi sipped her tea, looking relaxed. After a while, Xiao Tying raised his head and sighed. Third younger sister, I've decided to go to Fairy's capital. Fairy's capital? Xiao Qi frowned. Big brother, are you going to beg the emperor? Yes, the safest way is to beg the emperor. Xiao Tying nodded slowly. For second younger sister, this is the only way. The emperor will not agree. Xiao Qi shook her head. If he really agrees, he will die of exhaustion. Won't he die of exhaustion? A heavenly god realm expert could do many things that were impossible for a heavenly god realm expert, including reviving the dead. However, enlightened masters would never do such things. Enlightened masters valued the karma of the world more and were more afraid of it. Enlightened masters were not invincible. Their opponents were the rules between heaven and earth. If they violated the rules, they would be punished, and there was no way to escape. If the emperor agreed to save second sister, it was obvious that all the public houses would come to the emperor to beg him. Xiao Tying said, How would we know if we don't beg? Sigh. Xiao Qi shook her head. If father comes out of isolation, he will beat you to death. He dash. Humph. Xiao Tying scoffed. The public house's reputation is not that valuable. The public house's reputation and second younger sister's life were clearly more important. As an incompetent father, how could he have the face to punish him? All right, it's good to try. Xiao Qi nodded slowly. Although she believed in Chu Li, he only had a 60% chance of success. If it was the emperor, an enlightened master, he should have a 100% chance. It was best not to take the risk, and Chu Li could understand. I'll leave today. The public houses are all depending on you. Xiao Tying scoffed. This time, Chu Li made a contribution to the Phoenix Tree faction. Remember this, and reward him next time. If this goes on, he will soon reach rank 2. Xiao Qi nodded lightly. Xiao Tying sighed. If he can destroy the Phoenix Tree faction, he can stop for a few days. Xiao Qi nodded. Destroying the Phoenix Tree faction would probably give a shock to the martial arts factions that were ready to make trouble. In recent years, with the decline of the public houses, the martial arts factions within the borders were ready to make trouble. They wanted to challenge the prestige of the public houses. The destruction of the Phoenix Tree faction would probably give them a bucket of cold water to wake them up and let them know what was good for them. She estimated that she could make these martial arts factions behave for a year. Xiao Tying said, I'll leave today and travel day and night. I estimate that I can reach Fairy's capital tomorrow and come back after 3 days. Look after second younger sister. Don't let Chu Li mess around. He was afraid that Chu Li would be impulsive and take advantage of his absence to act first and report later. Xiao Qi said impatiently, Don't worry. What kind of person do you think Chu Li is? Xiao Tying shook his head and said no more. A person who was blinded by love would not have any rationality. He believed that Chu Li was infatuated with second younger sister. That was why he risked his life to save her. That was why he was so eager to release the vitality sealing finger. When Xiao Qi returned to the stargazing tower, Chu Li was waiting there. He sat on the 3rd floor and drank tea while chatting with Su Ru. When he saw her return, Chu Li looked at her eagerly. Xiao Qi shook her head. Chu Li sighed. Master Xiao Tying doesn't agree. Big brother wants to beg the emperor. Xiao Qi said. Chu Li let out a long sigh. Xiao Qi glanced at him. Not disappointed? Chu Li smiled. If the emperor can make a move, that would be great. You are very concerned about second elder sister. Xiao Qi said faintly, That's rare. Chu Li smiled, embarrassedly. It's not my turn to care about second lady. It's good that you understand. Xiao Qi looked at him coldly. Su Ru was very good at reading the situation. Seeing that Lady Xiao Taiying was not in a good mood, she quickly changed the topic. Lady Xiao Taiying, the Imperial Treasury sent a few things. They said that Master Xiao Taiying wanted to give it to Lady Xiao Taiying to play with. What are they? Xiao Qi sat on the couch. Su Ru said, there are 2 treasured swords, 2 treasure blades, and 3 secret manuals. Forget about the blades. Send them back, but leave the secret manuals. Xiao Qi looked up at Chu Li. Let Chu Li pick one of the swords. Yes. Su Ru got up and opened the purple cabinet. She took out 2 long swords with dark green scabbards and placed them on the coffee table. The Phoenix Tree faction handed them over. Xiao Qi said, you pick one and pick another secret manual later. Thank you, lady. Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. Forget about the secret manual. I won't be polite with the swords. Chapter 151. The Phoenix Tree faction doesn't have any good secret manuals, so pick a treasure sword. Xiao Qi said lightly, you should change your sword. His light body technique was top-notch. If it was matched with a treasure sword, the power of a sneak attack would be even more amazing. Chu Li picked up the sword on the left. The dark green scabbard was heavy in his hand. The steady feeling spread from his hand to his body, and it blended with his body. Chu Li immediately liked it. He slowly pulled out the sword, and the gray sword body slowly revealed itself. The sword body seemed to be covered with a layer of dust, and there was no light. It looked more like a wooden sword, giving off a light feeling, but it was heavy in his hand. It was steady, simple and unsophisticated. He focused and looked at it. There were 2 small words engraved on the blade, modesty. With the light and dust, Chu Li muttered. Su Ru glanced at the long sword and smiled. This sword is a little strange. It doesn't seem to have any edge. It looked like a wooden sword. Could it be that the people below took the wrong one? Chu Li smiled. Good sword, I'll borrow Chief's hair. Su Ru rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. Try and see if you can cut it. As she said this, she plucked out a shiny black hair and placed it 1 meter above the modesty sword. Suddenly, she let go and the hair gently fell. Chu Li turned the sword and pointed the blade upwards. The hair fell on the blade and silently broke into 2 pieces. It really is a treasure sword. Su Ru smiled. It looks a little strange, but it's sharp enough. Let's look at the other one. Chu Li put the sword back into the scabbard and picked up the other long sword. The scabbard felt light in his hand, as if it was nothing. Chu Li felt like he was pinching a feather as he slowly pulled out the sword. The blade that was as clear as ice reflected a glimmer of light. The blade was thin and light, and its brilliance flowed like a pool of spring water under the bright sun. Good sword. Su Ru could not help but praise. The body of the sword was crystal clear and flawless, like an ice sculpture. The sword's light was bright and gentle. There was no threatening chill, and it was not sharp. Chu Li held the sword like he was dipping his hand into spring water. A cold breath came from his palm. It seemed that the material of the sword was not ordinary. It was light as if it was nothing, and it had the effect of calming one's heart. He concentrated and thought. He vaguely guessed that it might be a sword forged by Schwering. Snowflower was a rare material for forging swords. It was condensed from thousands of years of ice and snow. It was as light as a feather and as hard as cold iron. It also had the ability to clear one's heart. This is a good sword. Chu Li, do you want this one? Su Ru asked. Chu Li focused his attention and saw 2 small words carved on the blade. Flawless. He shook his head and said, I still prefer that modesty sword. That gray wooden sword? Suru widened her eyes in disbelief. How beautiful is this sword? Shuli said, I don't like such eye-catching things. Understood. Suru nodded and smiled. One look at the sword you've chosen, and I can tell that you're a sinister person who likes to plot against others. You flatter me. Shuli put on a fake smile. Suru giggled. Am I wrong? Shuli sighed. Chief, I've been wronged. Young Ru is right. Shao Chi pursed her lips and revealed a charming smile. This modesty sword really suits you. Then I'll kindly accept it. Shuli smiled and hung the modesty sword on his waist. He usually did not carry a sword in the public house, as fighting was not allowed in the public house. He did not need a sword. Even if he wanted a sword, he could return to the courtyard in a flash. Young Ru, where's the secret manual? Shao Chi asked. Su Ru put the flawless sword back into the cabinet and took out a box. She placed it on the coffee table. Shu Li opened it and saw that one was a palm technique and the other was a fist technique. They were both superior martial arts. He flipped through them. They were imprinted in his mind, but he did not want to practice them. These two martial arts were not of much use to him. Shao Chi saw that he was not very interested and said, Jiang Kuai is very outstanding. You've done a good job. Chu Li smiled. His light body technique is superb and he's experienced. It'll be easy for him to stand out. This time, he'll be rewarded with 10,000 taels of silver and a spirit blessing pill. Shao Chi said, Thank you, lady. This is a formal reward. Shao Chi waved her hand. You have to persuade him not to go down the old path. The public house is not forgiving. Chu Li nodded. In the evening, the setting sun dyed the lake and the island red. On the rose-colored lake, Shui carried a pot of flowers and sailed on a boat. Her snow-white gown was also dyed a rose color by the setting sun. She came to a small island and passed through the forest. She knocked on the door of a small courtyard. Su Yuding's voice came from the courtyard. Who is it? Sister Shu, it's me, Xueling. Xueling raised her voice. The courtyard door opened, and Su Yuding stood at the door in a light green gown. She smiled like a flower. Xueling, come in. Xueling carried the flower in and smiled. I brought you a moonlight orchid. Moonlight orchid. Su Yuding looked at the orchid in the pot in surprise. It's a moonlight orchid. She also liked flowers and had heard of the famous moonlight orchid. It will glow in a few days, Xueling said. It will be very beautiful. This is too precious. Su Yuding looked at it in admiration and shook her head. The two of them entered the pagoda. Su Yuding lit the charcoal fire in the red clay stove and continued to stare at the moonlight orchid. Xueling said, the moonlight orchid in the public house was cultivated by Master. It has exceeded its lifespan by 3 months, so it is not that precious. Master is in charge of the East Garden. It is not a big deal to move one here. Is it against the public house's rules? Su Yuding asked. Third lady will not punish Master for such a small matter. Xueling smiled. The moonlight orchid is really beautiful, especially at night. I have heard of it for a long time, but I have never seen it, Su Yuding said excitedly. You can't buy it even if you have money. Xueling nodded. How do I move it out? Su Yuding looked at the pot carefully. It is very easy, Xueling said. Dig some mud from the lake and dry it. Then dig a hole and put the mud at the bottom. Place the moonlight orchid on top of it and then bury it. Xueling, help me, Su Yuding said. She was afraid that she would accidentally kill the moonlight orchid. That would be a sin. No problem. Let us go to the East Garden and ask Brother Li for some mud. We will plant it when we come back. Can I go to the East Garden? It is okay. All right then. Su Yuting was tempted. Jiang Kuai asked about the grudge between Chu Li and Gu Litong and told her about it when he came back. She also learned about the East Garden and the West Garden. She knew that they were the best gardens. Then let's go now, Xueling said. The two left the courtyard and came to the East Garden. They stepped onto the shore, and Xueling knocked on the jade chime. Li Yu's bear-like figure appeared quickly. When he saw them, he smiled enthusiastically. Xueling, this lady looks unfamiliar. Madame Jiang, Xueling introduced. Brother Li, I would like to bring Madame Jiang around the East Garden. Welcome, welcome. Li Yu smiled. Feel free to walk around. Brother Li, can you help me prepare some mud from the lake? I will bring it back later. We are going to plant the moonlight orchid. Leave it to me. Xueling brought Su Yuting around the East Garden. Su Yuting's eyes lit up, and she gasped in admiration. The two of them walked around for more than 2 hours. When they returned to Jiang Kuai's courtyard, Xueling casually mentioned that Master wanted to visit tonight. Su Yuting started to get busy. The two of them moved the moonlight orchid out and planted it. Then they started to cook. Chapter 152. The gazebo was brightly lit. Chu Li and Jiang Kuai sat opposite each other. Su Yuting and Xueling sat beside them. Xueling's hands were like jade, pouring wine from the pot from time to time. Brother Jiang Kuai, this time the public house rewarded you with 10,000 taels of silver and a spirit blessing pill. Chu Li said, your first task was a good start. Congratulations. What a coincidence. Jiang Kuai laughed. He was very excited. 10,000 taels of silver was a lot of money, but more importantly, the spirit blessing pill. The spirit blessing pill was a priceless treasure. It was equivalent to a life. No amount of money could buy it. With a spirit blessing pill, he became more courageous. His heart suddenly calmed down, and he was no longer afraid of danger. Actually, Brother Chu Li, I still have to thank you. Jiang Kuai raised his silver cup and drank it in one gulp. He sighed. If it wasn't for Brother Chu Li, I wouldn't have been able to enter the public house. Now that he entered the public house, he understood that at his age, even if his light body technique was superb, he would not be able to enter the public house. To enter the public house, one needed a referral. Ordinary public house guards did not have the qualifications to do so. They needed to be rank 4 and above. Grandmasters could only reach rank 4 protectors. It was even harder to reach rank 4 scribe. Chu Li repeatedly made great contributions and quickly advanced in rank was the first case. Referral into the public house. The referral was the guarantor. If anything went wrong, the referral would be punished. Chu Li tried his best to recruit him. Now that he thought about it, he did not know how to appreciate favors. However, if he knew that the public house protectors were so free, he would have agreed long ago. Chu Li smiled. Brother Jiang Kuai, you don't have to thank me. I have my own selfish motives. The public house needs to strengthen its strength. The more masters there are, the easier it will be for us. This is public service. Jiang Kuai smiled. Chu Li shook his head. I have another selfish motive. I want Brother Jiang Kuai to help me, but I don't have to enter the Glories Will courtyard. I can help myself. He had already seen through Jiang Kuai's thoughts. He did not want to enter the Glories Will courtyard and did not want to offend too many people. He understood Jiang Kuai's thoughts. He had just arrived and offended too many people. Even with his support, it was difficult for him to move. No problem. Jiang Kuai breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled. Personal help is definitely not a problem. I'll be there anytime. He had been in a dilemma. He was afraid that Chu Li would ask him to enter the Sky Soul Institute. He really didn't want to enter the Sky Soul Institute, but Chu Li had done too much for him. Once he opened his mouth, it would be hard for him to refuse. He did not expect Chu Li to only ask for personal help. Apart from letting out a long sigh of relief, he also felt somewhat guilty and grateful for not entering the Sky Soul Institute. Chu Li sighed to himself. It seemed that it hadn't been easy to open the Sky Soul Institute, so it was best for him to do nothing about it. The House of High Duke had been combed by the miss, and there were only 1 or 2 fish that had slipped through the net. There was no need to open the Glory's courtyard. He would occasionally come here and inform the Mississippi Jiang. Kwai changed the topic. He raised his glass and smiled. Brother Chu, today at the Martial Arts Hall, everyone is very excited. Destroying the Phoenix Tree faction will greatly increase the ambition of the High Duke's public house. Chu Li nodded. Jiang, Kwai said, but I think there's more to it than meets the eye, right? Chu Li smiled. Why do you feel that way, Brother Jiang? There's something wrong with that couple, Jiang Kwai said, so it's not that simple. Chu Li pondered for a moment and sighed. There is indeed an inside story. Jiang Kwai quickly put down the silver cup and listened attentively. Chu Li glanced at Su Yuding. Xue Ling quickly smiled. Sister Su, let's go take a look at the moonlight orchid and let them talk. Su Yuding nodded and bowed to Chu Li. Then she left the pagoda with Xue Ling. Chu Li waited until Su Yuding walked far away before he told him what happened. Jiang Kwai's expression changed several times. He was an old fish in Jianghu. He knew that people were sinister and had encountered many conspiracies. After listening to what Chu Li said, he could not help but be speechless. Lu Yuron was too scary. The Ren public house was too scary. Jiang Kwai glanced at Su Yuding, who was far away. Luckily, Chu Li sent her away so she could listen to all this. She was afraid that she could not sleep well. This time, she almost lost 10 protectors of the High Duke's public house. Chu Li said, when you go out to do a mission, you must keep your eyes open and be careful at all times. Yes. Jiang Kwai quickly nodded. He had performed a meritorious deed. He was a little smug at first, but now he woke up and regained his vigilance. Chu Li saw him like this, and his goal was achieved. He smiled. Speaking of which, other than congratulating you for your meritorious deed, I have a private matter to ask of Brother Jiang Kwai. Don't be so polite. Just say it. Jiang Kwai said. Chu Li took out a white jade bottle and handed it to Jiang Kwai. Help me send a spirit blessing pill to a friend. No problem. Where to? Jiang Kwai happily took the white jade bottle. Startling Cloud Association in Cloud State Town. Chu Li said, look for the association leader of Startling Cloud Association, Chun Siyu. Tell her that it's from Chun Li. She will understand. Cloud State Town is not far. I can send it over tomorrow, Jiang Kwai said. Chun Siyu must be someone very important to Chu Li. 1 spirit blessing pill was equivalent to 1 life. Who would be willing to give it to someone who was not close to him? Chu Li smiled. Thank you, Brother Jiang Kwai. In the future, if there are such small errands, just leave it to me. Jiang Kwai patted his chest and smiled. In the evening 3 days later, Chu Li was practicing the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait in the pagoda when Su Ru fluttered over. Her apricot gown made her face look bright and flawless. She entered the courtyard and said, Master Xiao Taiying is back. Chu Li closed the tiger bone box. Did the emperor agree? No. Su Ru shook her head and entered the pagoda. The emperor isolated himself and did not see outsiders. He invited a high official from the imperial house. Xue Ling said, it seems that the second lady can be saved. Chu Li frowned. You know the details? He sighed secretly. As expected, he could not invite the emperor. Su Ru smiled. Are you afraid that the high official from the imperial house will harm the second lady? Chu Li said, I have to understand his cultivation level. After all, it concerns the second lady's life. Su Ru said, Don't worry. Master Xiao Taiying is very considerate. He is more worried about the second lady. This person is Zhao Zilai, a grandmaster. His cultivation level is one of the best in the imperial house. Chu Li nodded slowly. How confident is he? Only half. Su Ru sighed. I can see that he is quite reluctant, but he has no choice. The Empress has ordered him to come. Chu Li frowned. Half, not as confident as you? Su Ru said, Chu Li, give up. Master Xiao Taiying trusts the high official from the imperial house more. Chu Li nodded slowly. If he was Master Xiao Taiying, he would also trust the high official from the imperial house more. The high official's cultivation level was far higher than his. Of course, he was more trustworthy. Su Ru waved her hand and said, Let's go. She did not wait for Chu Li to speak. She floated out of the pagoda, waved to the back, and disappeared from the entrance of the courtyard. Chu Li's fingers gently tapped on the stone table. His thoughts were tumbling, and he could not calm down. As expected, the emperor did not agree. The empress had done her best to send a martial arts master over. He did not have to worry about the high official's cultivation level. Master Xiao Taiying was not a fool. Xue Ling came over and whispered, Master, are you worried? Chu Li shook his head. Xue Ling said, He is the high official from the imperial house. Chu Li smiled and sighed again. He was far more confident in himself than others. He knew that his mental strength was far stronger than ordinary people. His control of inner energy was far better than ordinary people. If he was only 60% confident, others might not even have 30%. Chapter 153. Su Ru quickly returned. Master Xiao wants to welcome High Official Zhao, and specifically asked you to go. Let's go. Want me to go? Chu Li frowned. Su Ru smiled. You are a rank 3 scribe now. Other than those old men who are unwilling to move, you have the highest rank. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. He also wanted to see this high official Zhao. When the lanterns were lit, Chu Li followed Su Ru to Iron Eagle Island. The island was brightly lit and very lively. The maids were in 2s and 3s, and their bodies were light. When they saw Chu Li and Su Ru, they stopped and bowed. Su Ru waved her hand from time to time and brought Chu Li to the hall. There were more than 20 tallow candles in the hall, and it was as bright as day. Xiao Taiying was talking to a tall old man. Next to Xiao Taiying was Xiao Qi. Chu Li had already seen through the omniscient mirror before entering the hall. This tall old man had a round face, and the corners of his eyes were curved. He was smiling amiably and looked like he was in his 50s. However, he was a grandmaster. Chu Li speculated that he was over 100 years old. Seeing Chu Li and Su Ru coming over, Xiao Qi waved her hand. Chu Li closed fist saluted. Xiao Taiying glanced at Chu Li and pointed to a seat for Chu Li to sit down and talk. He called Chu Li over to put him at ease so that he would not have a knot in his heart. Chu Li was also sincere in saving second sister. He could not hurt his feelings too much. A rank 3 scribe's feelings must be taken care of. Elder Zhao, this is the chief of Glorysville Courtyard. Chu Li, Xiao Taiying smiled. I heard that Elder Zhao is coming and specially came to pay my respects. He, old bones, there is no elegance to speak of. Zhao Zilai waved his hand and laughed. On the other hand, this little brother has an inner god's will. He can be said to be a young talent. I am far inferior to him when I was young. Chu Li closed fist saluted. Elder Zhao, you flatter me. Elder Zhao, do you want to meet Xiao Shi first? Co Tying smiled. It's good to know. No need, no need. Zhao Zilai smiled. Don't trouble second lady. Elder Zhao is in Fairy's capital and is knowledgeable. Have you heard of Vitality Sealing Finger? Co Chi asked faintly. Zhao Zilai shook his head and sighed. I have been in the forbidden area for a long time, and I have heard of Vitality Sealing Finger. This is the biggest taboo in the Forbidden Land. Co Tying shook his head and sighed. I really don't know who could be so vicious. It's something that happened more than 10 years ago. I can't find out anything even if I wanted to. There are not many people who know about vitality sealing. Zhao Zilai said, we can always find one. This vitality sealing finger is formless and formless. Co Tying sighed. I wonder who could have such a malicious heart. Even if we can't catch him, the heavenly way will not spare him. Zhao Zilai comforted. The cycle of karma will not let him get away with it. I hope so. Co Tying sighed. Chu Li did not say a word and quietly looked at Zhao Zilai. Through the omniscient mirror, he realized that Zhao Zilai's cultivation level was indeed profound. It was a notch higher than Zhao Qingshan, but not much higher than Zhao Qingshan. After all, Zhao Qingshan was already a top-notch grandmaster. While he was investigating, he also observed Zhao Zilai's thoughts, and his heart sank. Just as the banquet was about to start, Chu Li said, Master Xiao Tying, Lady Xiao, aren't you going to greet Elder Zhao? Elder Zhao? Xiao Qi glanced at him. They deliberately did not greet Zhao Qingshan. A king would not meet another king. If Zhao Qingshan saw Zhao Zilai, he would definitely not be happy. Why should they make things difficult for him? Chu Li was experienced in human relations. He knew that there must be a reason for him to say this. Chu Li nodded seriously. Elder Zhao is also a grandmaster. He must be on good terms with High Official Zhao. Xiao Qi took a deep look at Chu Li and looked at Co Tying. Big brother, please invite Elder Zhao over. All right. Co Tying glanced at Chu Li expressionlessly and raised his voice. Lin Quan, invite Elder Zhao over too. Yes, master. Lin Quan responded and quietly left the hall. Zhao Qingshan, right? Zhao Zilai smiled. Speaking of which, we are old acquaintances. Is he used to staying in the public house? Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. Fortunately, Elder Zhao is here. Otherwise, under the pressure of the Rin public house, our days will be even more difficult. Oh. Zhao Zilai smiled and shook his head. The public house is not weak. How can it be so unbearable? Master Co is too modest. Zhao Qingshan followed Lin Quan to the hall and stepped into the hall. When he saw Zhao Zilai, he was stunned. Why are you here? Zhao Zilai smiled. Elder Zhao, we haven't seen each other for a long time. You are not dead yet, Zhao Qingshan said coldly. Zhao Zilai laughed. You are not dead yet. How can I bear to die? We are old friends. Let's have a drink. You flatter me. Zhao Qingshan sneered and closed fist saluted. Master, third lady, I am not on good terms with him. It is awkward to be together with him. It is better for me to leave first. Co Tying smiled. Elder Zhao, the visitor is a guest. Sit down. Xiao Qi glanced at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything. He secretly concentrated on what the two were thinking. Zhao Qingshan sat next to Chu Li and remained silent. Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. Master Co, we are old enemies. We became enemies when we were young. After so many years, seeing him as strong as before, it really makes me feel emotional. Not at all. Co Tying smiled. This time, I have to trouble High Official Zhao. Sigh. Master Co, I am really not sure. Zhao Zilai shook his head and smiled bitterly. In terms of cultivation level, I am not much stronger than Elder Zhao. If he does not dare, I am the same. Zhao Qingshan's face darkened and did not speak. He secretly scolded Zhao Zilai for his sinister intentions. It was obvious that he was trying to sow discord. Xiao Taiying said helplessly, "No matter what, I have to try. I can't watch my sister slowly wait for death, right?" Chu Li interrupted again. "Master Xiao, could it be that the Run public house plotted against the second lady?" "Impossible." Xiao Taiying frowned. This Chu Li, he really did not know what he wanted to do. Chu Li said, "Looking at Lu Yurong's means it may be the Rin public house. High official Zhao, do you know Lu Yurong?" "The lady of the Rin public house." Zhao Zilai smiled. "I have seen her before." Chu Li said, "Lu Yurong's means are insidious. This kind of thing is definitely done." He. Zhao Zilai did not comment. Xiao Taiying said impatiently, "How old is Lu Yurong?" Chu Li smiled faintly. "She is still young. What about her master?" "High official Zhao should know her master, right?" He. Young brother Chu's words are interesting. Zhao Zilai waved his hand and laughed. Chu Li smiled. To be able to teach someone like Lu Yurong, her master must be a powerful person. It's a pity that we can't know each other. What a pity. Xiao Qi had been quietly watching and did not speak. Chu Li's behavior was completely different from his usual calm demeanor. There must be a reason. Now it seemed that there was a problem with this high official Zhao. Chu Li then followed the rules and did not speak anymore. After Zhao Zilai and Zhao Qingshan left, there were only 5 people left in the hall. "Chu Li, what's going on?" Xiao Qi did not wait for Xiao Taiying to get angry and directly asked, "Is he really related to Lu Yurong?" Su Ru also looked at him curiously. Chu Li sighed. "My lady, I'm afraid so." Su Ru quickly asked, "What's the relationship?" Chu Li said, "The relationship between Zhao Zilai and Lu Yurong's master is not ordinary." Xiao Taiying's face was gloomy. He knew that Chu Li had a special skill similar to third younger sisters, or even better. He thought that he was open and above board. There was nothing that he could not say to others. He dared to use Chu Li. However, Chu Li had a weakness. He was too young. Young people's temperament had not been sharpened, and their temperament was unstable. It was easy to be impulsive and do bad things. Even if he had a special skill, it was difficult to control his nature. Xiao Taiying scoffed. "I don't even know who Lu Yurong's master is." Chu Li said, "I don't know who Lu Yurong's master is, but I know that he has a close relationship with Zhao Zilai. With a little test, I found out. My lady, you also noticed that his expression was strange, right?" Xiao Qi nodded lightly. "High official Zhao's identity is different. We can't just speculate." Xiao Taiying said impatiently. Chapter 154. How? Xiao Taiying was dubious. Chu Li said, "Imitate Lu Yurong's symbol and ask him out. You need him to believe it." Xiao Taiying shook his head. "Don't think he's stupid. He's more than 100 years old, and he's smarter than us. How could he not notice what you said just now? Of course, the premise is that there's something wrong with him. I don't need to worry about him not falling for it," Chu Li said. Xiao Taiying was interested. How? He saw Chu Li's confident look and was dubious. Chu Li said, "Lady Xiao knows the Rin public house's secret communication code, right?" Xiao Qi nodded. "Yes, I know a little." "Ask him to meet in Lu Yurong's name." Chu Li smiled. "He'll most likely fall for it." Sura shook her head. "He won't fall for it so easily." Chu Li smiled and said nothing. "It's good to try," Xiao Qi said. She glanced at Xiao Taiying. Xiao Taiying snorted and did not comment. There was nothing wrong with testing him. If Zhao Zilai was innocent, and he could not detect it, then he must not make a move no matter what. Chu Li, Xiao Qi, and Suru stood on the boat. The boat floated on the lake. A bright moon hung high in the night sky. The moonlight shone on the lake, and it was cool and pleasant. The lake breeze was gentle and refreshing. Is there really something wrong with him? Xiao Qi said lightly. Chu Li said, I can't say much in front of Master Xiao Taiying. There's definitely something wrong with Zhao Zilai. I can't let him make a move. I'm afraid that if I say this, Master Xiao Taiying will suspect that I have ulterior motives. Aren't you afraid that Lady Xiao Qi will suspect that you have ulterior motives? Suru scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Xiao Qi glanced at Suru and said lightly, he has a relationship with Lu Yurong. He may not dare to harm second eldest sister. What if Lu Yurong looks for him personally? Chu Li said. Xiao Qi looked at him thoughtfully. Chu Li said, Lu Yurong might do it. Lu Yurong will look for him personally. Suru suddenly realized and pointed at Chu Li. Oh, I understand now. No wonder you're so sure that he will fall for it. Chu Li scoffed. Consider it as borrowing Lu Yurong's influence. Suru immediately understood Chu Li's idea. He wanted to steal Lu Yurong's victory. Zhao Zilai knew that Lu Yurong would come looking for him, so they rushed ahead of Lu Yurong. He left a message with the Rin public house's secret code. If he really had a problem, he would fall for it. Chu Li, you're really cunning. Suru scoffed. Chu Li said, for the second lady, this is the only way. Miss, can we find Lu Yurong? If we're always on the defensive, there will be a time when we can't defend ourselves. We have to strike first. You haven't seen Lu Yurong, have you? No. Find an opportunity. Let's meet her, Xiao Qi said. Suru said, that's not easy. Lu Yurong almost always stays in the residence. My lady, we've only met her once. Chu Li asked curiously, is Lu Yurong not leaving the public house? Strategizing in a tent will determine victory from 1,000 miles away. Xiao Qi said, Lu Yurong will make all the plans in advance. She will calculate all the routes, and we just need to follow the plan. She has calculated all the accidents. Chu Li frowned. Xiao Qi said, most likely. It's really scary. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. He knew that he could not do this. Although he had a high IQ, he was not good at scheming. This Lu Yurong was really scary. Xiao Qi said, she's quite mysterious. I've only met her once by chance. What kind of person is she? Chu Li asked. He could not help but be curious. He activated the omniscient mirror to look at the scenery in her mind. On a beautiful maroon horse, a young girl with a white veil galloped past. She was a graceful woman in a moon-white gown, but her face could not be seen clearly. Xiao Qi shook her head. I can't see through her mind. She pondered and looked at Chu Li deeply. She could see through other people's thoughts, but she could not see through Chu Li's. He was like a pool of clear water, calm and unperturbed. She was far more sensitive than ordinary people. She could feel that she was being spied on, and Chu Li had the ability to read minds. Just now, her heart moved. It should be him reading her mind. Chu Li said, looks like I have to go to the Rin public house. Jiang Kuai is proficient in the bone shrinking technique. You should learn from him. Xiao Qi said lightly, change your appearance and get close to the Rin public house. You might have a chance to meet Lu Yurong. She has been staying in the public house, but on a special day, she will come out. Lu Yurong visited her brother's grave every year. Not everyone can learn the bone shrinking technique. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. The bone shrinking technique was not a top-notch martial art. It was just a very shallow heart technique. Because it was shallow, it was more difficult to cultivate. It was easy to get started, but it was almost difficult to perfect it and reach Jiang Kuai's level. Most people who cultivated it could only make themselves a little shorter, and they could only persist for a while. Unlike Jiang Kuai, not only could he shrink his whole body, but he could also maintain it for a day. Chu Li estimated that the reason he could cultivate the bone shrinking technique to such a level was the same as his light body technique. It was all because of the strange fruit he ate, which changed his physique. In the early morning, Zhao Zilai woke up from his meditation, feeling refreshed. He came to the courtyard and breathed in the fresh air. His whole body felt comfortable. It was completely different from the dry air in Fairy's capital. The air here was moist and fresh. Just breathing it was a great enjoyment. Unfortunately, he could not stay here for long. Fairy's capital was his home. A maid served him food. After he ate, he walked out of the courtyard and strolled by the lake. The island he was on was a fine house. The courtyard was exquisite and elegant. The rockery and water were all made by famous artists. It was extraordinary, but compared to the imperial house, it was ordinary. He strolled around the island and slowly made his way back. He suddenly stopped, and his eyes swept across a rockery by the roadside. He clearly saw the pattern on a stone on the rockery. At first glance, the pattern looked like a natural pattern on the stone. It was not obvious, but he could tell at a glance that it was Lu Yurong's unique symbol. He was surprised. This Lu girl really came to find him? She was very resourceful. He thought that there were many Lu Yurong spies in the public house. As soon as he arrived, she knew and came to find him. He glanced at the pattern and thought about it carefully. He read the message contained in the pattern and continued to return to the courtyard. He sat in the courtyard and read. When a maid served tea, Zhao Zilai casually asked a few questions about the environment here. The maid carefully answered. He waved his hand, indicating that the maid did not need to serve him. He wanted to stay quietly. He had a quiet day. Co. Taiying did not come again and let him rest quietly for a day. When the lanterns were lit, he told the maid that he would not eat dinner. Then he boarded the boat and left the public house. He walked along the street to the Sky Inn. The Sky Inn was the largest restaurant in Chongming town. It was 3 stories high and majestic. He felt that it was not inferior to the restaurants in Fairy's capital. After a few glances, he went up to the 3rd floor. When he saw a person sitting at a table by the window, his heart sank. Chapter 155. Elder Zhao. Co. Taiying raised his hand to greet him. His handsome face showed a smile. Come and sit with us. Zhao Zilai's mind was racing. Was it a coincidence, or was he fooled? Maybe they just happened to appear in this place at this time. After all, Sky Inn was the largest restaurant in Chongming town. It was not surprising for Co. Taiying to come here for a meal. Or was he waiting for him here? He was very sure and did not panic at all. Whether Co. Taiying was here by coincidence or on purpose, he was a high official of the imperial house. Co. Taiying could not do anything to him. He smiled and went over. Master Co., you are here too. It is really a coincidence. Co. Taiying stared at him with a fake smile on his face. If I knew that Elder Zhao wanted to come over for a meal, I would have invited you. Let's sit at the same table. What do you think? He secretly sneered. Chu Li really guessed it right. How could there be such a coincidence? What made him even more depressed was that even if he knew that he was involved with Lu Yurong, he could not do anything to him. The high official of the imperial house had a high status. As the elder master of the public house, he could not reach that far. All right. Zhao Zilai sat at the table and smiled at Lin Quan. Lin Quan smiled humbly and bowed to show his respect. Brother Lin Quan is also considered a top-notch master. Zhao Zilai laughed. You don't look like one. Lin Kuan smiled. You flatter me. Co. Taiying said, Elder Zhao, is there anything wrong with our hospitality? It's pretty good. Zhao Zilai smiled. I always like to wander around. I like to be carefree, and I don't like to be tied down. I want to take this opportunity to walk around Chongming Town. Elder Zhao, feel free to do as you please. If you have any instructions, just let the maid know. I will do my best as a host. Co. Taiying smiled. At this time, tea was served in the tavern. Lin Kuan got up to take it and handed it to Zhao Zilai. Zhao Zilai took the teacup and smiled. I wonder when will you unseal the second lady's vitality finger? The sooner it's done, the better. I can also stroll around to my heart's content. No hurry, no hurry. Co. Taiying picked up the teacup and slowly took a sip. Let my sister rest for a few days first. It's too late for regrets. He believed 70 to 80% of Chu Li's judgment. Even if it was a coincidence today and he wronged Zhao Zilai, he could not let him remove the vitality sealing finger. I can't take the risk. Second sister only has one life. That's true. Zhao Zilai put down the teacup and smiled. But I want to see second miss first and see her condition. Of course. Co. Taiying nodded and smiled. Of course, we have to meet him before we make our move. Zhao Zilai said, the young lad at yesterday's banquet is already a third-rank imperial bodyguard at such a young age. He is really amazing. Chu Li. Co. Taiying's face darkened. He scoffed unhappily. He is indeed a genius. However, his temperament is wild and unruly. Please don't laugh at him. Elder Zhao. He's a young man. It's inevitable. Zhao Zilai shook his head and smiled. It's hard to be calm at such a young age. Train him well. Co. Taiying laughed. He's still young. The future is still long. Zhao Zilai sighed and said, it's a pity that I didn't see the High Duke. I wonder where is the High Duke now? Co. Taiying's face darkened. He quickly regained his smile. Father is cultivating in isolation. He has already instructed me not to disturb him. As his son, I dare not disobey him. This Zhao Zilai was so annoying. He touched my sore spot. Sigh. The High Duke's elegant demeanor is still fascinating. Zhao Zilai shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that I can't see him. Co. Taiying smiled and changed the topic. Come. Elder Zhao, try Sky Brothel's signature dish, crystal beef with radish. The bartender served a big bowl of dishes. The aroma filled the air. After the meal, Co. Taiying returned to Iron Eagle Island with a gloomy face. He sat on the armchair in the hall and sneered. Zhao Zilai. Lin Kuan lowered his eyebrows and said gently, Master, there's no need to be angry. Older people tend to have a strange temper. It's fine as long as you don't lower yourself to his level. Humph. Co. Taiying sneered. I think he's deliberately angering me. Lin Kuan, do you think he's suspicious? Lin Kuan smiled. Master, I don't dare to say. Don't give me that. Hurry up and say it. Co. Taiying said impatiently. Lin Kuan said, if we're talking about suspicious, he's the high official of the imperial house. He's usually high and mighty. It's not strange for him to say something unpleasant. Just because of this, you suspect him of colluding with the Ren public house. Isn't that too rash? Co. Taiying scoffed. Lin Kuan smiled embarrassedly. Of course, it's indeed a little suspicious. It's too much of a coincidence. Old people become crafty. That's right. Co. Taiying pointed at him. Lin Kuan chuckled. Co. Taiying said, no matter what, we don't dare to use this Zhao Zilai anymore. Lin Kuan said, if it doesn't work, we can hire another high official from the imperial house. This time, the Empress is giving face to the High Duke's public house. If we don't use this one, we'll be asking for it. Xiao Taiying scoffed. Lin Quan said, "What should we do? Let me think again." Xiao Taiying frowned. "We can always find a master." "I know that master has a close friend." Lin Quan looked at him carefully and whispered, "He's a grandmaster." "Who is he?" Xiao Taiying asked coldly. Lin Quan said, "Thunder Guiding Blade, Feng Zhuyang." Thunder Guiding Blade. Xiao Taiying thought for a while and frowned. "He's good friends with master?" Thunder Guiding Blade was famous. His blade was like a thunderbolt. It was as fast as lightning and unavoidable. Even though he had not been seen for more than 10 years, his reputation did not fade. "It's a friendship of life and death." Lin Quan nodded. "However, Thunder Guiding Blade has gone into seclusion, and master has isolated himself. We haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. I don't know how he's doing now. If he hasn't abandoned his martial arts, he'll be a top-notch master." "I've heard of Thunder Guiding Blade." Xiao Taiying nodded slowly. "Since his martial arts is good, let's give it a try." Xiao Taiying could not care less about his pride and anger. He would not care about his father's friend. Lin Quan quickly said, "Then we have to send people to look for him. After he went into seclusion, he never came out. I'm afraid that he's isolated himself like master. Or why did he go into seclusion?" Xiao Taiying asked, "Is it really because of a woman?" There was a rumor in the martial arts world that Thunder Guiding Blade went into seclusion because of a woman. "It seems like it," Lin Quan whispered. Xiao Taiying frowned and looked at him. Lin Quan whispered, "It seems to have something to do with second madam." Xiao Taiying scoffed. He did not want to ask too much about the grudges of the older generation. However, this matter was related to second sister's life. He had to look into it. Lin Quan said, "Thunder Guiding Blade also liked second madam. After second madam passed away, he was disheartened and went into seclusion. Since his martial arts is so good, he won't die. We have to find him." Xiao Taiying said. Lin Quan said, "I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Even if he did not isolate himself, he would go into seclusion. If there were not many people around, it would be hard to find him. After so many years, there were only a few people who could recognize Thunder Guiding Blade. At least, the eyes and ears of the public house could not recognize him. Master, we can't be careless with Zhao Zilai," Lin Quan said. "After all, he's a high official of the imperial house. Just treat him well." Xiao Taiying scoffed. "Don't let him find fault with us." "Yes." Lin Quan nodded. Chapter 156. Zhao Zilai went out of Skyin and chatted in Chongming town. The streets were bustling with people and carriages, bustling with activity, which made him experience a different kind of prosperity. The fairies' capital was also very prosperous, but it was different from here. It was less noisy and not lively enough. As he grew older, he preferred lively places and did not want to stay in the house alone. It was as if he was the only one left in the world, alone. More than 100 years passed in a flash. Most of his friends had passed away. The old friends who were still alive could be counted with 2 hands. As a high official of the imperial house, he had no choice but to meet his old friends at will. Walking on the bustling street, he let the noisy atmosphere wash away his loneliness. "Grandpa, Grandpa!" A little girl ran up to him. She was only as tall as his waist. She was thin and small, with a red flower on her head. She smiled and said, "Grandpa, there is a big brother who asked me to give you a letter." Her little hand struggled to hold up a letter in her hand. "Hee, little girl, which big brother?" Zhao Zilai smiled and squatted down. Grandmasters had an intuition for danger and were not afraid of plots. The little girl said, "Big brother said his surname is Liu." "Grandpa, We'll know once you hear it. Surname Lu. Zhao Zilai took the letter and smiled. Okay, thank you, little girl. He took out a piece of silver from his arms and gave it to the little girl. Thank you, Grandpa. The little girl took the silver and ran away happily. She went into the crowd and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Zhao Zilai opened the letter and took out the letter to read a few words. He frowned and thought about it. He carefully looked at the pattern on the lower left corner of the letter. This was a unique pattern of an old friend. Only she used it, and others did not know. The expression on his face was complicated and changed several times. Suddenly, he smiled and rubbed his hands. The letter and envelope turned into powder at the same time and drifted away from his fingers. He clapped and rubbed his hands. After cleaning the powder, he walked on the street with his hands behind his back. Chu Li was cultivating the sentient menace. After cultivating the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait, he cultivated the sentient menace again. His progress was extremely fast. At the 5th level of bone training, his bones became harder and denser. A cool breath flowed between his bones. His strength became stronger and stronger. An ordinary sword thrust was accompanied by a whistling sound. He was extremely fast, and with the help of his inner force, his speed was even faster than lightning. As his strength increased, the speed of his flying blades became faster. Chu Li felt that if he continued to improve and mastered the 5th level, his strength would be so strong that even a grandmaster would not be able to dodge his flying blades. Someone knocked on the door of the courtyard. Xue Ling opened the door, curtsied, and invited Xiao Qi and Suru in. Xiao Qi wore a snow-white gown, while Suru wore an apricot gown. The two of them went to the gazebo and sat in front of Chu Li. Chu Li closed-fist saluted. Master Xiao Taiying is back. Xiao Qi frowned. Zhao Zilai is indeed untrustworthy. Big brother will not use him. What do you plan to do then, Master Xiao Taiying? Chu Li asked. Seek help from the Empress again? Xiao Qi said faintly. How did Big Brother tell the Empress? Could it be that there's something wrong with Zhao Zilai, and she doesn't want to use him? Chu Li asked, are you going to look for martial arts masters elsewhere? No matter what, the eldest young master would not feel at ease with himself. He would rather find an expert from the outside. He understood the eldest young master's thoughts. He was still in the innate realm. After all, there was a huge gap between the innate mastery and the grandmaster. Since it involved the second lady's life, he had no choice but to take the risk and trust himself. Big brother wants to find the thunder guiding blade, Xiao Qi said. Chu Li searched his mind. Feng Jiang? He is indeed a top-notch grandmaster. Can you find him? Feng Jiang is father's best friend, but he has been in seclusion for more than 10 years. It will probably take a while to find him, Xiao Qi said. It also depends on luck. Chu Li frowned. People who lived in seclusion in the mountains often hid themselves. If they did not hide, well, the past grudges would still come looking for them. It was impossible to retire. Once you entered the martial arts world, you had no choice. How could you just retreat? The world today was different from where he was in his previous life. There were mountains and forests everywhere. If you hid inside, you would not be able to find him. If it was a top-notch martial arts master, it was even more impossible to find him. They were not afraid of beasts and could live deep in the mountains. They were self-sufficient and did not rely on the outside world at all. Lady Xiao, High Duke. Chu Li asked carefully. If High Duke personally took action, he would be able to solve this problem. Xiao Qi shook her head. It's useless. No one can find him now. It's harder than finding the thunder guiding blade. Isn't he in seclusion? He is not in seclusion in the public house. He is looking for a quiet place. Xiao Qi said lightly. He did not tell anyone. Su Ru kept signaling him with her eyes. Chu Li sighed. Then we can only find the Thunder Guiding Blade. There are no other masters. The key is to be trustworthy. Xiao Qi shook her head. Besides, there are not many people who can compare to Sir Zhao. Chu Li said that Shi Wu is powerful. It's even more impossible for him. Xiao Qi smiled. Shi Wu's position in the Ren public house was the same as Zhao Qingshan's position in the Yi public house. The chief high official master was the sharpest sword. Chu Li said, Shi Wu is often outside. Xiao Qi said lightly, Lu Yurong's schemes mostly rely on him. She is worried about others. Chu Li pondered. The Ren public house is likely to have an even more powerful master, so there is no need for Shi Wu to hold the fort. Xiao Qi frowned. Chu Li said, Lady Xiao, do you think there is such a possibility? Xiao Qi thought about it and slowly nodded. It's not impossible, so we still have to be careful. Chu Li said, don't fall into Lu Yurong's trap. If there is only one option, Lu Yurong might be able to predict it. Xue Ling served a white jade teacup and quietly left. Chu Li opened the teacup and took a sip of tea. Even if Lu Yurong is so calculative, she can't have thought of this thunder guiding blade, right? Xiao Qi drank the white jade teacup and slowly said, It's okay. The thunder guiding blade is not something they can touch whenever they want. The thunder guiding blade was famous because of the thunder guiding blade. He was not afraid of being surrounded. His blade was fast, and his body movement technique was fast. Among the masters in the world, there were only a few who could kill him. Chu Li shook his head. I'm not afraid of them killing the thunder guiding blade. If I were Lu Yurong, I would use the thunder guiding blade as bait and set up an ambush. Even if the High Duke's public house knows there is an ambush, we still have to go in, right? You want to go? Xiao Qi said lightly. Chu Li smiled and said, I can act as a pawn and scout the path ahead. This time, Big Brother is going personally, Xiao Qi said. Master Xiao Taiying is going personally. Chu Li frowned, but did not say much. It was not surprising for Master Xiao Taiying to go personally. As a junior, he needed to ask for help. Of course, he had to show courtesy and sincerity. However, Master Xiao Taiying was the stabilizing force of the High Duke's public house. He was in charge. How could he risk it? If something bad happened to him, the High Duke's public house would be in chaos. Xiao Qi said, Be prepared. First, we have to spread out our manpower to find the thunder guiding blade. Yes, Chu Li nodded. The two girls left the courtyard. Not long after, Su Ru returned and said to Chu Li, The high official from the Imperial House asked you to be his tour guide. He wants to tour Chong Ming Town tomorrow. Chu Li was surprised. Me? He said he likes young talents and wants to get close to you. Su Ru nodded and smiled. Treat him well tomorrow. Don't be impolite, and let him pick out any mistakes. Chapter 157. In the early morning of the next day, Chu Li finished his cultivation and sailed to the island where the abode was located. Xue Ling steered the boat, while Chu Li stood at the bow in a green robe with his hands behind his back. There seemed to be a light gauze curtain slowly unfolding on the lake. The thin water vapor was clearly visible. The morning air was particularly fresh and moist. When he took a breath, it was as if his lungs were cleansed. The turbid air dissipated, and his whole body felt refreshed. His mood inexplicably became better. Xue Ling wore a bluish-white gown, and her face was as white as jade. Master, what does High Official Zhao mean? Chu Li shook his head. Xue Ling scoffed. I think he is up to no good. Master, what is your status? How can you have time to accompany him? Chu Li laughed. My status is far inferior to him. Xue Ling pouted her red lips. Chu Li said, "Don't have this attitude later. He is a guest from afar. It is my duty to be the host. If I don't go, who will go? Will Master Xiao Taiying and the lady accompany him personally? Where are we going today?" Xue Ling asked. "Let's see what High Official Zhao thinks." Xue Ling scoffed and accelerated the boat. Since she reached the innate mastery's boundary, she no longer needed to row the boat. She could use her inner energy to drive the boat. She liked to sail the boat and never got tired of it. Chu Li knew that this novelty could only last for a while before it dissipated. She drove the boat very fast, and in a short while they arrived at the island where the abode was located. However, she found that Zhao Zilai was already standing on the shore waiting. Zhao Zilai wore a purple robe and looked amiable. Chu Li Fist saluted from afar. "Sorry for making Senior Zhao wait for so long." "Hee, I just arrived too." Zhao Zilai smiled and said, "Then let's go straight to Sky Inn for breakfast." His burning gaze moved away from Chu Li and landed on Xue Ling. He stared at her cold and elegant face, her plump and perky breasts, her slender waist, and her round, peach-like buttocks. Xue Ling frowned, and her face became colder. She felt that his gaze was like a solid substance, like a pair of hands slowly caressing her. She suddenly had goosebumps and felt disgusted. She was already used to the gazes of others and could turn a blind eye to them. However, this kind of intense and oppressive gaze was a little unbearable for her. "Please." Chu Li took a step forward and stood in front of Xue Ling. He smiled and said, "Senior Zhao, please." Zhao Zilai chuckled twice and flew up lightly, displaying his exquisite qing gong. His figure turned in the air, forming a circular arc, and he wanted to land behind Xue Ling. Xue Ling was shocked. Chu Li turned around and reached out his hand, wrapping his arm around her slender waist. Then he turned around and swapped their positions. As soon as Zhao Zilai landed, Chu Li turned around and faced him. Zhao Zilai chuckled and glanced at Xue Ling, who was blocked by Chu Li. He shook his head and laughed. It seems that young Chu Li is very concerned about this maid. Chu Li replied calmly, "She's my personal maid." "Senior Zhao, let's go." Xue Ling bit her red lips and leaned against his back. The feeling of safety and warmth filled her heart. She turned her head and did not look at Zhao Zilai. Chu Li steered the boat forward and soon reached the shore. After he and Zhao Zilai went ashore, he turned around and said to Xue Ling, "Go back and do what I asked you to do." "Yes." Although Xue Ling was surprised, she answered straightforwardly. She knew that Chu Li had changed his mind. He originally wanted her to follow. After all, it would be too unsightly if there was no one to serve tea or water. It would be beneath their dignity to let them do this kind of thing themselves. It would also seem that the public house did not treat them well. "Hee." Zhao Zilai chuckled and waved his hand. "Don't. It's good to have this lady follow us. What's the point of us two men? It's much more interesting with this lady, isn't it?" Chu Li smiled. "She still has something to do. It can't be delayed." "What's the big deal?" Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. "It's good to have someone else do it. Don't tell me that this old man is a man-eating spirit beast." Chu Li smiled and looked at Zhao Zilai deeply. "My maid is timid. She can't stand being scared by Elder Zhao. It's better to spare her. You can go." He did not wait for Zhao Zilai to say anything and waved his hand to let Xue Ling leave. Xue Ling did not even look at Zhao Zilai and steered the boat away. Zhao Zilai was surprised. This lady is actually an innate master. I really misjudged her. Chu Li smiled faintly. She's quite hard-working. "Senior Zhao, let's go." "I like this lady very much." Zhao Zilai walked slowly and smiled. "If I ask Master Xiao Taiying to come over, I think Master Xiao Taiying will not refuse. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Master Xiao Taiying will not agree. He did not know about other public houses. The scribes and protectors of the public house were not private property. Everything had the public house's rules. The public house's rules were the cornerstone of the public house. No matter how bold Master Xiao Taiying was, he would not dare to break it and act arbitrarily. Oh, Zhao Zilai chuckled. Do you want me to try? Senior Zhao is so young, but you're still strong. I really admire you. Chu Li smiled. There was a murderous intent in his heart, but his smile became more easygoing. Sigh, there's no other way. Zhao Zilai shook his head and said, I've lived for too long. Time is hard to bear. I have to find something interesting to pass the time. Women are the most wonderful things in the world. God specially created them to entertain us men. Chu Li chuckled. Young Chu Li, don't take women too seriously. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy them. Instead, you'll end up with a body full of injuries. You're asking for trouble. Zhao Zilai shook his head and was filled with emotions. Chu Li smiled. Senior Zhao has been injured by a woman before. He. Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. Young Chu Li, it's not a good thing to be too smart. You won't live long. Thank you for your concern, Senior Zhao. Chu Li smiled and said, Lu Yurong's master must be an amazing woman. She must have hurt Senior Zhao very deeply. Zhao Zilai's eyes flashed, and the cold air around him surged. This was a scar that he could not heal for a long time. For many years, no one dared to expose it. This brat in front of him, who did not know his own limits, repeatedly exposed this scar. He really deserved to die. Chu Li pretended not to know and smiled casually. Lu Yurong's master's surname is Fu, right? You know quite a lot. Zhao Zilai kept the smile on his face and snorted with a cold face. What's the name of the little girl just now? Fu Yueying. Chu Li smiled. Senior Fu Yueying must be a scheming person, right? The two of them went out of the House of Duke's south gate and strolled along the street. They seemed to be leisurely chatting casually. Zhao Zilai's heart was filled with murderous intent. A smile appeared on his face again. There was no need to be angry with a dead person. It seems that the House of Duke is indeed well informed. They are the dogs of the royal family. He was originally entrusted by Lu Yurong to kill Chu Li. He felt a little regretful. Chu Li had reached rank 3 at such a young age. He had a promising future, and it was a pity to kill him. However, he had offended Lu Yurong and could only die. But now he changed his mind. This kid really deserved to die. No wonder Lu Yurong wanted to kill him. Chu Li smiled and said, The House of Duke is the dogs of the royal family. What about Senior Zhao? If Senior Zhao and the House of Duke were to fight, I don't know if the royal family will side with the House of Duke, or you, Senior Zhao? Zhao Zilai's smile disappeared again, and he sneered, Young Chu Li, do you want to try? Chu Li smiled and shook his head. That's not necessary. I still have to give face to the Empress. Even if I don't do it for the sake of the monks, I still have to do it for the sake of the Buddha. Good. Good. Zhao Zilai put on a smile again. Young people are really ignorant and fearless. Chapter 158. Chu Li laughed. The older you are in the martial world, the more timid you are. But I think Senior Zhao Zilai is an exception. You have a lot of guts. Compared to you, young Chu, I am much smaller. Zhao Zilai laughed. Chu Li shook his head and said, Being in the House of High Duke, you want to kill a rank 3 scribe of the House of High Duke. Is Senior Zhao Zilai sure that the House of High Duke will not retaliate? Zhao Zilai's expression changed slightly, and then returned to a smile. What you said is interesting. He was secretly surprised. How did Chu Li know about the news he received last night? The symbol on the letter was different from the symbol seen in the house of High Duke. Only 3 people in the world knew about it. One was Lu Yurong's master, another was Lu Yurong, and the last one was himself, because this symbol belonged to Lu Yurong's master, not Lu Yurong herself. Chu Li smiled and said no more. The 2 walked slowly with their own thoughts and finally arrived at the Sky Inn. "Let's go in and eat. We have to eat our fill." Zhao Zilai laughed. "What do you say, young Chu?" Chu Li understood the meaning in his words. He wanted to send him on his way. He had to eat his fill before his death. He smiled. "Yes, no matter what we do, we have to eat our fill. It seems that great minds think alike. Let's go up." Zhao Zilai laughed. The 2 went up to the Sky Inn and ordered a few side dishes, white steamed buns, sugar steamed buns, and 4 kinds of porridge. Zhao Zilai pinched a sugar steamed bun and slowly took a bite. Then he drank a mouthful of refreshing vegetable porridge. His face was full of enjoyment and satisfaction. He smiled and said, "Young Chu, you are from the Temple of Autumn, right?" Chu Li frowned, and his heart sank. Soon he smiled again. "Yes, I grew up in the Temple of Autumn. Senior Zhao Zilai's descendants are all outstanding. His 4 sons are all innate masters. The eldest son is a grand master. It is really gratifying to have a successor." The sugar-steamed bun in Zhao Zilai's hand was pinched flat. He laughed twice. "Young Chu, you are so powerful at such a young age. Are all the monks in the Temple of Autumn also so high in cultivation?" Chu Li smiled. "The disciples of the Temple of Autumn do not practice martial arts and are not as good as Senior Zhao Zilai. There are also many outstanding grandchildren. 2 innate masters. It is really rare." What he read from Zhao Zilai's mind could be used to threaten him. Zhao Zilai shook his head and sighed. "It is my fault that the descendants are incompetent." Chu Li said, "Senior Zhao has entered the imperial house, so naturally he won't be able to teach them personally. However, with Senior Zhao around, the people of the martial arts world will have to be cautious. So Senior Zhao has to be cautious. If anything were to happen, who would be able to protect them?" Zhao Zilai squinted his eyes and chuckled. "They don't need my protection. The children and grandchildren have their own lives. I don't care so much." Chu Li smiled. "That's true. Who can protect who? As a member of the martial arts world, who doesn't have enemies? If they're not careful, their entire family will be wiped out, and their descendants will be cut off." The murderous intention in Zhao Zilai's heart became stronger, and his smile became wider. "Yes, the Autumn Temple is still better. There are not so many troubles if you don't practice martial arts. But why do you practice martial arts in this world and add so many troubles?" They were afraid that they would be killed without being able to resist. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. How can a person who cultivates Buddhism not transcend life and death? The pain of life and death is nothing compared to the pain of the Saha world. Zhao Zilai chuckled. "If that's the case, doesn't it mean that all the people in Buddhism don't want to live? Come with a vow, live in the world, leave when the fate is over, and transcend reincarnation. This is a true monk." Chu Li smiled. "It seems that Senior Zhao Zilai doesn't understand the importance of Buddhism. If you have time, Senior Zhao Zilai can go to the Autumn Temple and live for a while to dispel your obsession. Things remain the same, but people have changed. If you need to let go, let go." The smile on Zhao Zilai's face froze. He said coldly, "Let go?" Chu Li smiled. "Senior Fu is not an ordinary woman. It's a pity to miss her. But since the fate is over, why can't you let go?" Zhao Zilai said coldly, "Young Chu, how old are you? How do you know what a thing is?" Chu Li shook his head. "Those who love deeply are hurt the most. Senior Fu's feelings for Senior Zhao Zilai are over. If you continue to insist, you will only become an enemy. Why bother? The sugar bun in Zhao Zilai's hand was squeezed into a ball. Blue veins were visible. He sneered, "You better shut up." Chu Li smiled and lowered his head to drink a mouthful of porridge. His face was full of satisfaction and enjoyment. Zhao Zilai took a deep breath and suppressed his surging killing intent. "Damn you, I'll kill you later." The two of them ate breakfast in silence. Zhao Zilai said, "There's nothing to stroll around in the city. I want to enjoy the scenery outside the city." "Okay." Chu Li smiled. "There's a different kind of scenery outside the city. Green mountains and clear waters. It's a good place." The two of them came to the top of a mountain outside the city. Zhao Zilai stepped on a boulder and looked down at the lush mountain. The green tent was like a veil. He sighed, "Green mountains and clear waters. It's really a good place to bury one's bones." Chu Li stood on another boulder 2 feet away from him. He smiled and said, "It's really a good place to bury one's bones." Zhao Zilai turned around and looked down at him. "Young Chu, let's be frank. You know what I want to do." Chu Li nodded. Zhao Zilai smiled. "Well, let's exchange a few moves. I know your light body technique is excellent, but you won't watch me go to the Autumn Temple, right?" He inquired about Chu Li's background and knew that his light body technique was excellent. He used the Autumn Temple to force him not to escape. Chu Li sighed. "Senior Zhao, why bother to get involved in this mess? Senior Fu has already abandoned you. Why do you still listen to her disciple? You're courting death." Zhao Zilai roared and threw a punch. Chu Li did not dodge. His purplish-golden breath flashed, taking advantage of the fact that Zhao Zilai had used his full strength and was unable to change his move. Chu Li threw a cold glint from his hand. Bang! He flew out straight away. Zhao Zilai's punch was extremely fierce. It was like a boulder rolling down from the top of the mountain. Chu Li flew backward and took a few steps in the air. He used the superior heart technique of borrowing strength to deflect most of the force. However, he was still heavily imprinted on the stone wall. Zhao Zilai's old force had just dissipated, and new force had just arrived. He could only watch as the knife flew from the sky. There was no way to avoid it. He desperately twisted his body, but the flying knife was too fast. He only managed to avoid his chest. Chi! The flying knife broke his chest and shot into the stone wall from behind. Only half of the knife's body was exposed. Zhao Zilai roared and threw another punch. However, it was weak and powerless. All the strength in his body seemed to gush out from the wound. There was very little left, and he could not support this punch. He quickly pressed a few fingers to stop the bleeding. He took out a jade bottle from his arms and was about to take the pill. Chu Li threw his left hand, and another cold glint shot towards Zhao Zilai. Zhao Zilai wanted to avoid it, but he was powerless. He watched as another knife pierced his chest. Blood gushed out like a fountain, and the strength in his body was drained. Chu Li found that the power of his flying knife had increased, although Zhao Zilai was careless and was too close to him, so the flying knife could hit him. However, if it was the previous flying knife, Zhao Zilai could still avoid it. He floated down from the stone wall and came in front of Zhao Zilai. "Senior Zhao, I'm sorry." He slowly stretched out his right index finger and pressed it towards Zhao Zilai. He activated the heart technique of the Tempest Temple's spear finger strike that he learned from F.A. Yuan. Zhao Zilai barely wanted to avoid it, but he had no strength in his body. Seeing Chu Li's index finger getting closer and closer, he sneered, "Young Chu Li, you dare to kill me?" Chu Li smiled. "Why not? If you kill me, the Imperial House will never forgive you. Zhao Zilai stared at him without fear. Even your High Duke's public house will be implicated. Chu Li shook his head. Then let's see. He pressed his finger on Zhao Zilai's chest. The finger force of the spear finger strike suddenly leaked out and crushed his heart. His life was instantly cut off. Chapter 159. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief and shook his head. A high official of the Imperial House, he had poked a hornet's nest. He shook the modesty sword lightly. The gray blade was not stained with blood. He sheathed his sword and turned around to look at the 4 yellow-robed monks surrounding him. He shook his head and smiled. Fei Yuan, you're finally here. Before he left the city, he had already seen Fei Yuan with the omniscient mirror. There were 3 grandmasters with him. With 4 grandmasters coming together, it seemed like they were determined to take him down. That was why Fei Yuan dared to kill Zhao Zilai. Fei Yuan had changed into a yellow monk's robe. His head was bald, and his ring scars were eye-catching. He put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. He sighed and said, Almsgiver Chu has committed the sin of killing again. It is a sin. Chu Li smiled. Monk, why don't you chant some scriptures to send him on his way? Almsgiver Chu, follow me back to the Tempest Temple. Fei Yuan sighed. You can't escape. Chu Li shook his head. That might not be the case. We won't know until we fight. Everyone, be careful. My flying blades aren't as easy to deal with as I am. As soon as he finished speaking, both of his hands shot out. Chi. 2 beams of cold light shot out almost at the same time. Fei Yuan shifted his body to the side and used the shadow shift technique to avoid the blade. A golden light flashed on the other young monk's face. He stretched out his purplish-golden right palm and pressed it against the flying knife. A purplish-golden radiance appeared in his palm, and the radiance circulated ceaselessly. The flying dagger shot into the purple-gold light and stopped moving as if it had sunk into a rock. Chu Li was surprised. He turned his head and smiled. Fei Yuan, what martial art is this? Demon binding seal. Fei Yuan said faintly, Brother Fei Ming is extremely talented and has successfully cultivated the demon binding seal. Almsgiver Chu, your flying dagger is useless against him. Chu Li nodded. What a demon binding seal. A cold light shot out from his right hand. Ding! The flying knife collided with the flying knife in front of Fei Ming's palm. Fei Ming shouted. The 2 blades froze in the air at the same time, trembling like snakes. It was as if they were trying to break free from the shackles of the purple gold light and wanted to drill forward. Chu Li smiled and shot out another flying blade from his left hand. Ding! The 3 flying daggers froze in the air at the same time, trembling even more violently. Finally, with a soft chi sound, the flying dagger broke free from its shackles. It shot towards Fei Ming. Fei Yuan pointed with his finger, while the other 2 monks threw out a punch. The 3 forces hit the 3 flying knives at the same time. Ding! The flying knife bounced off in the air. Fei Yuan extended his left index finger and pointed at Chu Li. The other 3 also pointed their fingers. 4 finger forces sealed off all of Chu Li's directions. It was unavoidable. Chu Li frowned. There were so many of them trying to restrain his light body technique. A purplish gold light flashed on his face as he activated the sentient menace to block the finger force. Then he flew away. Chi! A bloody hole suddenly appeared on his body. This finger force directly broke through the sentient menace. It broke through the skin and flesh without any hindrance and pierced through the body. Its power was even stronger than that of a flying knife. Chu Li frowned. He ignored the pain and looked at Fa Yuan. As expected of the Tempest Temple, what kind of martial art is this? Perishable touch. Fa Yuan shook his head. Almsgiver Chu, it's useless. The sentient menace can't block the perishable touch. Chu Li unsheathed his sword and held it in front of him. The invisible finger force was like a pillar of air in his eyes, clearly visible. He thought that the improved sentient menace would be able to block the finger force earlier. He did not expect the Tempest Temple to have a martial art that specifically countered the sentient menace. Ding, 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 ding. The finger force hit the sword. Chu Li floated away and waved his sword to block the finger force. The finger force from the four monks became more concentrated. The finger force that filled the sky formed a large invisible net that completely covered Chu Li. He relied on the speed of his sword and the finger force to block it. Amit Ba, Fa Yuan suddenly chanted, and a layer of golden light appeared on his face. Chu Li noticed something strange. It was different from the golden light of the sentient menace. Fa Yuan's sentient menace was at a higher level, and it flashed with a purplish gold light. As the golden light appeared on his face, Fa Yuan became more solemn and holy. It was as if the Buddha had descended to the world, causing people to have the urge to convert. Amit Ba, Fa Ming, and the other two monks chanted too. Their faces flashed with golden light, and they looked solemn and holy. Chu Li frowned. Their vigor skyrocketed, and their cultivation level skyrocketed. An invisible force from the void flowed down like a waterfall, changing their bodies. It was as if they were constantly growing bigger. In the blink of an eye, their cultivation level had increased by 4 to 5 times. Chu Li saw that the situation was not good. He activated Imminent Skyline and appeared 2 miles away in an instant. He let out a sigh of relief and frowned as he looked at the bloody hole in his chest. Blood was gushing out like a fountain. The Imminent Skyline just now had aggravated his injury. The method to stop the bleeding was useless. The finger force could not be removed, and the blood kept flowing. Amit Ba, for chants sounded almost at the same time. Chu Li's expression changed slightly. The 4 monks stepped out of the void and stood 2 feet away from him, surrounding him. The golden light on the faces of the 4 monks was faintly discernible. Their expressions were solemn, and their gazes were compassionate. It was as if 4 Buddha statues were looking at him. Chu Li furrowed his brows. There was an invisible force in the void that connected them to the heavens and the earth. This invisible force then connected the 4 of them as one. Chu Li could clearly see this thin layer of power, and it was a power that made his hair stand on end. He felt as if he was in a well, but he did not dare to touch the surroundings of the well. He could not touch the power that made his heart palpitate. Chi, 4 finger forces shot out at the same time. Chu Li waved his sword to block 2 and sidestepped the other 2. Ding ding. 2 finger forces were blocked by the sword. They moved like lightning and instantly drilled into his palm along the sword. Suddenly, a numb feeling spread throughout his body. His body could not help but stagnate. This stagnation allowed the 4 finger forces to shoot at him. He desperately activated Imminent Skyline and disappeared in a flash again. The 4 of them disappeared at the same time. Chu Li suddenly appeared 2 miles away. He looked down at the 2 bloody holes in his shoulder and chest. This was more powerful than the perishable finger from before. It kept devouring the inner energy around his body. If it was not for the life and death scripture, he would not have been able to move. The golden light flashed. The 4 of them stepped out of the void again. Chu Li did not wait for them to attack and disappeared again. He did not care about the aggravation of his injury and kept activating Imminent Skyline. The four of them also kept appearing, like shadows following him. When Chu Li appeared at the south gate of Chongming town, they also appeared. Chu Li was covered in blood. His clothes were bloodied, and his face was pale. It was not even noon yet, but the south gate of Chongming town was bustling with people coming and going. Seeing Chu Li suddenly appear like a bloody man, the people were shocked. Some screamed, and suddenly it was a mess. Chu Li looked at the four of them, who were glowing in golden light. He slowly picked up the white jade waist tag from his waist and raised it above his head. Fa Yuan and the other three stood quietly 20 feet away from him, looking at him with a compassionate expression like the Buddha. Chu Li laughed and waved the white jade waist tag. The people saw the waist tag in his hand and recognized that he was a guard of the House of High Duke. They all made way for him. Chu Li withdrew his gaze from Fa Yuan and the others. He put away the waist tag and staggered into the town gate. There was blood on the ground under his feet, which caused the people to talk. Fa Yuan and the other three people flashed and disappeared from where they stood. They were nowhere to be seen. Chu Li stepped into the town and was rushed by the bustling atmosphere. His vision darkened. Chapter 160. Chu Li was sometimes conscious, and at other times he was in a daze. Relying on his remaining spirit, he maintained the influx of spiritual energy from all directions to stabilize his injuries. The power that Fa Yuan and the others displayed this time was beyond his imagination. It was truly terrifying. Sun Jun and Wang Shuani were rank 7 protectors. Sun Jun, like his name, was extremely handsome. Wang Shuani's appearance was average. His face was full of bumps and hollows that affected his appearance, but his calmness and honesty were trustworthy. They were both very talented in martial arts. They entered the innate mastery's boundary at a young age. They could not wait to take on a mission and spent half a month to complete the escort mission. The reward was generous. With a large sum of money, it was considered a huge sum in the past. Naturally, they wanted to enjoy life. They had breakfast at the Sky Inn in the morning. After leisurely eating, they could not stay idle. They wandered around the town for half a day and finally decided to go out to play. At this time, there were many beautiful sceneries in the suburbs. As they walked towards the south gate of the town, they suddenly saw the crowd opening a path. In the midst of people's screams, a man covered in blood staggered out of the crowd. He was about to fall at any time. They were startled and looked at each other before rushing over. They were full of energy and wanted to find something to do. When they saw the situation, they immediately stepped forward. It's the public house guard. Wang Shuani supported Chu Li and saw the white jade waist tag on Chu Li's hand. Rank 3 scribe. Sun Jun's expression changed. The two looked at each other again. A rank 3 scribe was definitely an important person. They usually did not have the chance to meet him. They had heard of Chu Li's name, but did not recognize him. Without hesitation, the two carried Chu Li and rushed forward. As they ran, they shouted, "Make way! Make way! The public house has an emergency." The people on the street quickly made way and looked over curiously. Seeing the two of them running faster than a horse, they began to discuss curiously. Something big is going to happen. People shook their heads and sighed. They heard someone from the public house. Someone else is going to be in trouble. Sun Jun and Wang Shuani ran to the south gate of the public house in one breath. They shouted from afar, "Quick, call the 100 Herb Courtyard's high official, rank 3 scribe." 2 protectors stood at the south gate of the public house. They stood motionless beside the 2 stone lions like statues, their auras concealed by the stone lions. It was as if they were standing in the shadows. They were often overlooked. One of the guards turned around and ran into the mansion. His speed was as fast as the wind. He crossed the square and stepped onto a small boat. Like an arrow released from a bow, he shot towards the 100-herb courtyard in the distance. Sun Jun and Wang Shuani did not stop. He boarded the boat and rushed to the martial arts hall. The training field in front of the martial arts practice hall was bustling. They practiced sabers, swords, spears, rods, and other strange weapons. There were all kinds of them, and they were in full swing. "Excuse me, make way," Sun Jun shouted. Everyone stopped what they were doing and saw that Chu Li was covered in blood. He hurriedly made way for Sun Jun and Wang Shuani, curiously looking at Chu Li. Chu Li was covered in blood, but his face was clean. Only the corner of his mouth was stained with blood. "It's Chu Li," someone shouted. Yes, it's Chu Li," someone else chimed in. "What happened?" "Junior brother's son, what's wrong?" "I don't know, I saw it at the South City gate." Sun Jun and Wang Shuani strode through the passageway as they replied. "He seemed to be badly injured, so we carried him back." "This is the youth champion, Chu Li. Who could be so powerful to injure him like this? This injury is too serious. I'm afraid it's dangerous." As long as he's still breathing, with the existence of the spirit blessing pill, as long as he was breathing, he would not die. However, with such a serious injury, the most terrifying thing was not his life. If his martial arts were destroyed, he would be a useless person even if he was alive. There was no point in living. May the Buddha bless him. Sigh. People shook their heads and sighed. Chu Li was the youth champion. He was a top-notch martial arts master. No one knew what kind of opponent he encountered to be so seriously injured. If it were them, they would probably lose their lives. As a protector, no matter how strong their martial arts were, even a grandmaster would not be able to escape from danger. While people were discussing, a small boat suddenly docked. Guo Mulin carried a medicine box and rushed over. His body movement technique was extremely fast. High official Guo has come personally. A rank 3 scribe. What kind of identity is that? Of course, High official Guo has to come personally when he's injured. With High official Guo here, there should be no problem. That's not necessarily true. Our cultivation level is low, so our injuries are easy to heal. But for a martial arts master like Chu Li who could injure him, it's not easy to heal. All right, stop talking. People will think that you're gloating. I'm not. I know you won't dare. Guo Mulin rushed to the basilica. Chu Li was lying on the long counter in the Hall of Martial Arts. Blood was still flowing, slowly flowing down the counter. The smell of blood was overwhelming. Guo Mulin's expression did not change, but when he saw Chu Li lying on the bed, his expression changed. "Chu Li?" Sun Jun said. "Elder Guo, we saw Chu Li at the town gate. Is he all right?" Wang Shuani also stared at Guo Mulin. Guo Mulin waved his hand and pressed on Chu Li's wrist. Hiss! Chu Li's clothes were torn, revealing his chest. There were 5 bloody holes that were bleeding. 3 were on his chest and 2 on his left and right shoulder respectively. White bones could be seen. Everyone took a deep breath. "It's finger force." Guo Mulin touched the bloody holes and said coldly, "What a vicious finger force." "What finger force is this?" Wang Shuani asked curiously. If he were to encounter this kind of finger force in the future, he would hide as far as he could. Guo Mulin channeled his energy and examined Chu Li's chest for a moment. He sneered, "The Temple of Tempest's perishable touch. Humph. Perishable touch." Sun Jun was surprised. The Temple of Tempest did this? Did you see the monks from the Temple of Tempest? It seems like there were monks, but they did not enter the town. They stopped outside the town. There were 4 of them, and their faces were shining. Many people must have seen them, Sun Jun said. Wang Shuani said. Maybe they were chasing after Chu Li. Damn bald donkeys. Guomulin scoffed. He opened the wooden box and took out some ointment to stop the bleeding, but it did not work. Guomulin's face turned gloomy. He knew this was the result. The perishable touch was vicious. The finger force could not heal the wound, and it would continue to bleed until there was no more blood. Young Zheng, bring me the emerald sky liquid. He turned his head and said to a beautiful girl behind the counter. He threw the jade tag on his waist to her. Yes, the beautiful girl took the jade tag and replied respectfully. She would never give the emerald sky liquid to a normal doctor from the 100 Herb Courtyard. Guomulin was the chief high official of the 100 Herb Courtyard. Of course, she had to obey his orders. She had a graceful figure and wore a light green gown. Her movements were like smoke. She went behind a screen in the main hall and quickly came back. She took out a green jade bottle. The green was tender and fresh. It was so green that people could not help but want to take a deep breath and inhale the green into their bodies. She held the green jade bottle carefully and spoke softly. Elder Gua, there's only half a bottle of emerald sky liquid left. I know. Mulin waved his hand impatiently. He took the green jade bottle and opened the stopper. Then he took out a white jade bottle from his inner pocket. He poured out 5 spirit blessing pills and poured them all into the azure sky liquid. Chapter 161. Everyone looked at his actions in shock. They did not know how precious the emerald sky liquid was, but the spirit blessing pill was equivalent to a life. He had taken 5 of them in one go. How strong would it be? Mulin shook the green jade bottle and poured out some green ointment. He applied it on Chu Li's wound. A thick layer of green ointment sealed the wound. Soon, there was no more blood flowing out. Elder Mulin, did you stop the bleeding? Sun Jun asked carefully. Stop, Mulin said impatiently. Stop my asterisk SS. We're in big trouble. All right, you guys go do what you need to do. Don't cause trouble here. It's annoying. We can help, Sun Jun said. Help my asterisk SS. What can you guys do? Mulin said coldly. Can you die for him? Junior Chu Li's injury? Wang Shuani was shocked. Can't he be saved? His life is hanging by a thread. Mulin scoffed. He's tough anyway. Others will definitely die, but he has a chance. He had personally experienced Chu Li's exuberant vitality. He would not die even if he had a fatal injury. He would be full of vigor. He might be able to pull through this time. He turned his head and said, Young Zheng, go inform the Jade Guardian Island and inform the third lady. Yes, young Miss Zheng answered crisply and gracefully left. Xiao Qi and Su Ru were cultivating at the stargazing tower. Soon, someone informed them. When Xiao Qi and Su Ru heard the news, their faces changed. Xiao Qi stood at the window and frowned as she stared at the direction of the martial arts hall. Su Ru quickly said, My lady, I'll go and take a look. Xiao Qi said, Bring him back to the Gloriesville courtyard. Yes, Su Ru answered and called for 2 maids. The small boat flew and soon arrived at the martial arts hall. The people outside the martial arts hall were not in the mood to cultivate. They were all talking about Chu Li's injury. When they saw Su Ru and the 2 maids, they quickly shut up and fist saluted. Su Ru waved her hand and rushed into the martial arts hall. She saw Chu Li covered in blood. Her face darkened. Elder Mulin, what happened? They were ambushed by the bald donkeys from the Tempest Temple. Mulin scoffed. Those bald donkeys are scourges. They deserve to die. Su Ru asked, Is Chu Li's injury serious? Half and half. Mulin's face was gloomy. He shook his head and said, It all depends on him. He has already consumed the spirit blessing pill. The Great Lane Temple's perishable finger is extremely vicious, and they rarely use it. It seems like they think highly of Chu Li. I'll bring him back. Su Ru pursed her lips and said coldly, "Let Lady Xiao think of a way." "Heiss, go ahead." Mulin waved his hand. He was already powerless, and the rest depended on Chu Li's own abilities. Suru did not care that she was covered in blood. She helped Chu Li onto the small boat and returned to the Jade Guardian Island. The crowd watched as the boat gradually disappeared from their field of vision, and once again began to discuss. Chu Li was indeed highly regarded by the Third Lady. Suru stepped onto the Jade Guardian Island and waved her hand to signal the two maids to leave. She then helped Chu Li back to the Glory's courtyard. Xue Ling had already opened the door and walked out without even knocking. Xiao Qi was dressed in a white tunic as she stood behind the door. He frowned at Chu Li. "Miss, he's badly hurt." Sura looked worried. "Elder Gu can't do anything. He can only rely on himself." Xue Ling was stunned. She was motionless, and her face was pale. Xiao Qi stepped out of the courtyard and supported Chu Li's other side. She entered the Glory's courtyard and sent him into his room to lie on the bed. Xiao Qi held his wrist and frowned at Chu Li's face. What a strange inner energy. "The Temple of Tempest's perishable touch," Su Ru said. Xiao Qi's face darkened. Of course, she had heard of the perishable touch. Why did the Temple of Tempest's martial arts have to be trained in Buddhism first? It was because there were many evil antique studies, and the perishable touch was one of them. Su Ru quickly asked, "Do you have a way, Lady Xiao?" Xiao Qi bit her lower lip and slowly shook her head. "He's trained in the sentient menace. He should be able to survive." Chu Li was in a trance. He felt as if he was soaking in a hot spring. The pure, spiritual energy flowed around his body. He felt comfortable all over and slowly woke up. He let out a long sigh and slowly opened his eyes. "Chief." He saw Su Ru sitting on the side of his bed. She looked at him in a daze. Su Ru's eyes widened, and she shouted in surprise, "You're awake?" "Master, you're awake?" Xue Ling rushed in from outside. Chu Li tried his best to prop himself up. Su Ru and Xue Ling quickly came over to help him up. "How long did I sleep?" Chu Li looked at the bright window. Through the shadow cast on the bed, he knew it was noon. Su Ru rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. "You slept for a whole day." Chu Li was surprised. "Only a day? A day is still short." Su Ru scoffed. "It was the monks from the Temple of Tempest, wasn't it?" Sigh. Chu Li sighed. As expected of the Temple of Tempest. The Temple of Tempest had thousands of years of heritage. It was extremely profound. It was indeed extraordinary. He was heavily injured this time because he took advantage of the situation. He just did not expect the perishable touch to be so powerful. It seemed that the Temple of Tempest really wanted to kill him. The power of the mysterious martial arts displayed by F.A. Yuan and the other three was shocking. It was even more terrifying than the perishable touch. His intuition told him that if he were to face it head-on, he could only retreat. Su Ru said, "You almost died this time. The monks from the Temple of Tempest are really powerful. Your injury needs to be treated slowly. Elder Gua has examined it for you. There's no other way. You can only rely on your stupid martial arts to resolve it bit by bit." Xue Ling came in with a bowl of porridge. "Master, let me feed you?" "No need." Chu Li smiled. "I'm not that fragile. Can you use your arm?" Su Ru scoffed. Chu Li lifted his arm and sighed. His injury was on his shoulder. He could not use any strength. Xue Ling pursed her lips and smiled. "Let me do it." She sat in front of Chu Li, scooped up a spoon, and blew on it. Her breath smelled like orchids, and she brought it to his mouth. Chu Li's stomach growled a few times as he smelled the fragrance. His hunger surged like a tidal wave. He opened his mouth to eat the porridge, and Xue Ling fed him spoon by spoon. Take your time to recover. Don't worry about anything else. I'm leaving, Suru said as she walked out. I have to tell Lady Xiao. She's worried too. Tell Lady Xiao not to worry. I won't die that easily. Chu Li smiled. You. Suru shook her head and left. There were only the two of them in the house. It suddenly became quiet. Xue Ling's action of feeding him the porridge became stiff. Her cheeks blushed even more. Chu Li smiled and looked at her. Who else knows that I'm injured? Everyone knows. Xue Ling blew on the porridge and said, You looked too scary at that time. Chu Li asked, Who saved me? It was 2 rank 7 protectors. Xue Ling said, Sun Jun and Wang Xuani. They saw your waist tag and carried you back to the martial arts hall in the public house. Elder Guo went over to save you. I really have to thank them. Chu Li sighed. This time, I almost failed miserably. Xue Ling stopped her spoon and glared at him. When she saw his injury, she was so scared that her legs turned to jelly. Her whole body? Chu Li smiled. Don't worry. I won't die. Don't say such things. Xue Ling scoffed. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Xiao Qi's footsteps could be heard from outside. Chapter 162. Xue Ling finished feeding Chu Li a bowl of porridge and was about to feed him a second bowl when Xiao Qi floated into the room. Chu Li smiled at Xiao Qi. My lady. Xiao Qi's face was cold. Nonsense. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. I didn't expect the Tempest Temple to have such an antique study. I'm impressed. Xiao Qi scoffed. If the Tempest Temple is so easy to deal with, the Imperial Court would have destroyed them long ago. Do you think you're not afraid of them, just because you have good light body technique? She sat in front of the bed, and Xue Ling quickly moved away. Her tender fingers touched Chu Li's wrist and felt the overflowing vitality. Xiao Qi slowly retracted her fingers and said, Suru, Xue Ling, both of you go out first. I have something to say to Chu Li. Yes. Suru pulled Xue Ling and closed the door. Xiao Qi's eyes were like water as she quietly looked at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. Xiao Qi said, You killed him, right? Chu Li raised his eyebrows and nodded slowly. You're getting bolder. Xiao Qi said lightly. Chu Li smiled. If it weren't for the monks from the Tempest Temple, I wouldn't have dared to kill him. Xiao Qi said, You want to frame the Tempest Temple? Chu Li smiled. My lady, what do you think if I'm seriously injured and not treated? Xiao Qi frowned and shook her head. He wanted to fake his death to escape. It was a good plan. Why? Lu Yurong thought highly of me. She wrote to him and asked him to kill me. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. If he doesn't die, then I will. With your light body technique, can he kill you? He used Xue Ling and the Temple of Autumn to threaten me. Chu Li sighed. I had no choice but to get rid of him. Lu Yurong again. Xiao Qi frowned. This Xiao Zilai was too arrogant. He thought that by using this to force Chu Li would not dare to escape and could only fight with him. He was also sure that Chu Li would not dare to kill him. This was the road to death. No wonder Chu Li wanted to kill him. Chu Li said, Will there be trouble in our public house? The identity of the imperial house's high official was not a commoner. Xiao Qi frowned. The imperial court will not let this go. Zhao Zilai's identity is also the imperial court's reputation. If there's really no other way, I'll fake my death and escape, Chu Li said. It'll save me some trouble. He could imagine it. The imperial court would definitely put pressure on the public house. After all, the public house was only a public house. It was impossible for them to go against the imperial family. Let's wait and see. Xiaoqi shook her head. The position of the High Duke's public house was different from that of the government. It was not something that the imperial court could deal with. Chu Li said, "Do you think that I can frame the Tempest Temple?" "Are you confident?" Xiaoqi asked. Chu Li's way of handling the situation was very clever. Zhao Zilai had a knife wound on his body. It looked like he was the one who killed him, but if one looked closely, the wound on Zhao Zilai's chest was not caused by a flying dagger, which was suspicious. Xiaoqi suddenly realized that the wound on his heart was the key. What kind of martial art did he use to injure his heart? Spear finger strike. Chu Li smiled. It's the unique antique study of the Tempest Temple. Xiaoqi raised her eyebrows. You also know the spear finger strike. Chu Li shook his head. I can only use it when I reach the Grandmaster's boundary. Xiaoqi pondered for a moment. Fine, we'll deal with whatever comes our way. You should recuperate first. Chu Li replied, There's no hurry. Xiaoqi frowned. Chu Li smiled. The imperial court will send someone to investigate, right? We have to let them take a closer look. Perishable finger is vicious. Be careful not to burn yourself playing with fire. Yes. Xiaoqi looked at him and felt that there was nothing more to say. He did not kill Zhao Zilai on impulse. He had thought about it carefully and thought of a way out. Even if it was her, she would do the same. She could not let Zhao Zilai go just because of his identity. Go. 6 horses rushed into Chongming town with a gold medal. They galloped unscrupulously on the streets of Chongming town. The noisy streets were suddenly in chaos. People were screaming and cursing. The High Duke's public house was the biggest in Chongming town. Even the protectors of the High Duke's public house would not be so unscrupulous. The 6 middle-aged knights were dressed in purple. Their faces were gloomy, and their eyes swept across the people who were cursing. These people stared fearlessly. No matter how arrogant a martial arts master was, they had to be obedient when they arrived at Chongming town. If they really dared to kill someone, the High Duke's public house would not let them go. Therefore, the residents of Chongming town were not afraid of martial arts masters. The 6 knights sneered and sped up. They left the cursing far away and rushed to the front gate of the High Duke's public house in a short while. Halt! 2 guards stepped out from the shadows beside the stone lions. They held onto their swords and shouted in a deep voice. Nay! The 6 horses neighed softly. They raised their hooves and stopped in front of the 2 protectors. The 6 middle-aged knights landed on the ground. A shining gold medal was thrown to a protector. The imperial house's protector is here. The guard was in his 20s. His face was long and narrow, and his eyes were long and narrow. His whole body exuded a lazy aura. He flipped the gold medal over and over again, then slowly cupped his fists and said, Please wait a moment, let me report. They could not stand the insolence of these 6 knights. If it were not for their duty, they would have pulled them down from their horses. Ask your High Duke to come out and greet us. A middle-aged knight said coldly. The 2 protectors of the High Duke's public house rolled their eyes. They glanced at them and smiled. The narrow-faced protector kept the gold medal and strode into the public house. The 6 middle-aged knights coldly stared at the remaining protectors. This protector was in his early 20s. He had a baby face and looked very happy. He stared at them coldly and did not show any signs of weakness. The gazes of these 6 people were like swords that wanted to pierce through him. You have some guts. The 6 knights looked at him for a while. Seeing that he did not back down, they raised their chin and nodded. Not useless. The baby-faced protector stared at them coldly and did not say a word. He had a feeling that if he said anything, they would take the opportunity to attack him. He was no match for them. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. He could only hope that someone from the public house would come quickly. Hurried footsteps could be heard. Co. Tying brought a group of people to the front gate. He closed fist saluted from afar. "Dear angels, you have come from afar. Please come in." Co. Tying was followed by Lin Quan, Zhao Qingshan, and the other grandmasters. The 6 knights glanced at Co. Tying and the others and closed fist saluted. "Master Co., we have come under orders. Please excuse us." "Dear angels, you must have had a long journey. Go in and have some tea to moisten your throat. We can talk later." Co. Tying laughed heartily. He did not seem to mind their arrogance and coldness. The 6 middle-aged men nodded slowly. They were escorted into the public house by Co. Tying and the others. Iron Eagle Island Hall. After everyone took their seats, tea was quickly served. Zhao Qingshan and the other 5 sat below Co. Tying. Lin Quan stood behind Co. Tying. The 6 middle-aged knights put down their teacups and looked at Co. Tying coldly. The leader of the group was a middle-aged knight with sallow skin. He had a sickly look on his face, but he looked sharp. He stared at Chu Li. "Master Co., we have offended you this time. Please hand over the murderer who killed Brother Zhao." "Murderer?" Co. Tying put down his teacup and said slowly, "Does Senior Song know who the murderer is?" Song Siwen said coldly, "I heard that the person who traveled with Brother Zhao is called Chu Li. Is he the one who killed Brother Zhao?" Co. Tying's handsome face slowly turned gloomy. He said coldly, "6 angels, you are saying that Senior Zhao was killed by the public house. Chu Li? Brother Zhao's martial arts were outstanding. How could he have died for no reason?" A middle-aged man nodded slowly and sneered. "Could it be that the public house wants to protect the murderer?" Chapter 163. Song Siwen frowned. "Do we even need to investigate? We'll know at a glance." "Do you know who Chu Li is?" "He's from the public house." "Then do you know that Chu Li is just a scribe who just entered the innate mastery's boundary?" Co. Tying said coldly, "A kid who just entered the innate mastery's boundary killed a high official of the imperial house. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Killing someone doesn't necessarily require martial arts." "That's interesting." Co. Tying sneered at him. "A grandmaster would be ambushed." "Protector Song, can you please use your brain? Don't embarrass the imperial house." "Master Co., what do you mean?" Song Siwen's expression changed. Co. Tying sneered. "I'd like to ask you, what do you mean? You didn't even look at it and just convicted him. Is this how you angels do things? I'd like to ask the emperor himself. Did he send a bunch of incompetent and unreasonable people to purposely disgust the public house?" You. Song Siwen stood up and pointed at Co. Tying. "Co., you've gone too far." Co. Tying picked up his teacup and slowly took a sip. He sneered at him. "You didn't get off your horse when you entered the city. You just galloped in the city. You guys sure are impressive. We were ordered to come here to prevent the murderer from escaping. Of course, we were a little anxious." Song Siwen slowly sat down and coldly said, "Even if we were a little careless, I'm sure the emperor wouldn't blame us." "Careless?" Co. Tying sneered. "Do you guys still want to gallop in the public house? In order to fulfill the emperor's orders, we can only offend you." Song Siwen said calmly. Co. Tying scoffed. "Do you guys really think that High Official Zhao was killed by Chu Li?" "Of course it was him." Song Siwen scoffed. "He brought Brother Zhao out of the city. In the end, Brother Zhao died, and he survived. An innate master killing a grandmaster? That's strange." Co. Tying shook his head and laughed. "If an innate master could really kill an innate master, I'd rather not be a high official of the imperial house. It's too embarrassing. From what we know, Chu Li has killed a grandmaster before. Song Siwen said calmly. Can a normal grandmaster compare to high official Zhao? Co. Taiying said. He was lucky to be able to kill a normal grandmaster. High official Zhao was a high official from the imperial house. You can be killed by him? That's not necessarily true. Song Siwen said. There's always a time when a boat capsizes in a ditch. If that's the case, are you sure that it's Chu Li? Co. Taiying sneered. Don't you want to take a look at high official Zhao's injuries? There's no harm in taking a look, Song Siwen said. I believe you've already dealt with it. No wonder. Co. Taiying shook his head and said, gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure, did you think that we would fake the scars? This small matter is not worth mentioning to the House of High Dukes, Song Siwen said lightly. Sure, let's take a look first. After we've seen it, I hope you'll be able to say those words. Co. Taiying sneered. Please. Song Siwen stood up. Everyone walked out of the living room. Song Siwen said nonchalantly, Oh, right. Did you guys send Chu Li away first? Don't worry. He's heavily injured. He can't leave even if he wanted to. Co. Taiying said coldly, If he's really the murderer, the public house will punish him according to the rules. We will not let go of anyone who damages the relationship between the House of High Dukes and the imperial family. As he spoke, his gaze shifted back and forth between the six people's faces. The threat was clear. He sighed in his heart. Chu Li was too bold. He really dared to kill a high official from the imperial house. The six protectors from the imperial house looked at Zhao Zilai's corpse. Their faces were gloomy as they walked out of the courtyard and stood in front of Co. Taiying. Let's go back and talk. Co. Taiying walked towards the pleasure boat. The injuries on his body are from flying blades, right? Yes, it's flying blades. Chu Li uses flying blades, right? Looks like it's really him. Song Siwen nodded and looked at Co. Taiying. Master Co., we want to meet this Chu Li and ask him face to face. Otherwise, Master Co. will always say that we've wronged him. All right. Co. Taiying smiled. Of course we want to meet Chu Li. Follow me. A pleasure boat slowly sailed to the East Garden. Li Yu was already waiting on the shore. He bowed from afar with a flattering smile on his face. Everyone got off the pleasure boat and stepped into the East Garden. Co. Taiying said, Li Yu, how is Chu Li? Li Yu's flattering smile disappeared, and he sighed, Not too good. Let's go and have a look. Co. Taiying took the lead and walked forward. Lin Quan quickly followed. Zhao Qingshan, Song Siwen, and the others followed closely behind. They arrived at the courtyard where Chu Li was. As soon as they stepped into the courtyard, the strong smell of medicine hit them. They could not help but want to cough. In the middle of the courtyard, Chu Li was lying on a bed and basking in the sun. He stared at the sky with his eyes wide open. His face was as pale as paper, and he looked haggard. It looked like a tree that was about to die of drought with its last breath. Chu Li, Co. Taiying laughed in his heart, but his face was cold. These are the protectors from the imperial house. They are here to investigate the cause of High Official Zhao's death. They want to ask you a few questions. Chu Li's gloomy eyes fell on Song Siwen and the others. He said coldly, Ask away. You are Chu Li? Song Siwen came to the bed and frowned at Chu Li. Are you injured? Chu Li sighed. Song Siwen said, Zhao Zilai? Chu Li scoffed. Zhao Zilai? Song Siwen's spirit was lifted. He quickly said, Do you have a grudge against Zhao Zilai? A grudge of life and death. Chu Li said coldly. So, you killed Zhao Zilai? Song Siwen asked. Chu Li scoffed. I really want to kill him. Good, it's good that it's you. Song Siwen quickly said. Chu Li glanced at him and sneered. Don't you understand human language? Can I kill him? Chu Li, speak properly. Tell me what is going on. Xiao Taiying coughed and said in a low voice. Chu Li glanced at Song Siwen lazily and scoffed. High official of the imperial house? What bullsh *T. High official of the imperial house. Colluding with the monks from the Tempest Temple to plot against me. This is the work of the high official of the imperial house. Song Siwen was stunned. He stared at him and shouted, Don't talk nonsense. Chu Li said coldly, Can't you check if I'm talking nonsense or not? Just ask the monks from the Tempest Temple. What a joke! Song Siwen sneered. Although he was shocked by Chu Li's words, he quickly calmed down. If Zhao Zilai wants to kill you, why bother with all that trouble? He can just kill you directly. He wants to kill me? Chu Li curled his lips and said disdainfully, He doesn't have that ability. You're just an innate master. How dare you? Song Siwen turned his head and sneered at Xiao Taiying. Master Xiao, your public house is really talented. Xiao Taiying said, Chu Li's light body technique is the best. High official Zhao Zilai really can't kill him. What a joke! Song Siwen scoffed. Xiao Taiying said coldly, If the Tempest Temple wants to kill Chu Li, why would they need high official Zhao Zilai's help? If Chu Li can be killed so easily, the Tempest Temple wouldn't have failed so many times. The closest they got to success was this time. High official Zhao Zilai helped them a lot. I want to examine his wound. Song Siwen scoffed. Of course, there's no problem. Xiao Taiying said. Oh, right, High official Zhao Zilai, what's the deal with the fatal wound on his chest? What kind of martial art did he use? You protectors from the imperial house are knowledgeable. I'm sure you can recognize it. What about Master Xiao Taiying? I don't know. Xiao Taiying shook his head. I've never seen him before. Chapter 164. Xiao Taiying scoffed. The martial arts of the Tempest Temple are profound. Of course you wouldn't recognize it. Song Siwen gritted his teeth and frowned. Was Zhao Zilai really a killer from the Tempest Temple? Logically speaking, no matter how brave Chu Li was, he would not dare to kill a high official from the imperial house. He should understand that this was a matter of pride. The imperial house would never let it go. The House of High Dukes would not dare to protect him at the risk of falling out with the imperial house. It was said that Chu Li was a smart guy and would not make such a mistake. Smart people were usually calm and would not be impulsive. They would weigh the pros and cons of everything. Zhao Zilai had only been here for a day. It was impossible for him to have any deep hatred with him. He was a rank 3 scribe of the House of High Dukes. He had a bright future. Would he kill someone because of a small grudge, go against the imperial house, and ruin his bright future? Xiao Taiying scoffed. You can't recognize the injury, and you can't recognize Chu Li's injury. It's the same whether you look or not. Is Master Xiao feeling guilty? Song Siwen said slowly. Brother Zhao Zilai's crane-pecking energy is unique. It can hurt people's internal organs. It looks similar to Chu Li's injury. Xiao Taiying sneered. Protector Song, your eyesight is amazing. You can even see this. All right, Chu Li, let him see if it's the crane-pecking energy. Chu Li glanced at Song Siwen. Your eyesight is shallow. You might not be able to see it. Brother Li. Liu stepped forward and helped him to untie his shirt. His chest and shoulders were exposed. There were still a few bloody holes with a trace of blood dripping down. It was a ghastly sight. This is the crane-pecking energy? Xiao Taiying said impatiently. Open your eyes and look. Don't make a fool of yourself. Song Siwen frowned as he looked at the 4 bloody holes. He stretched out his hand to press on Chu Li's chest. Zhao Zilai's hand blocked his palm. Zhao Zilai extended his hand and looked at him coldly. Song Siwen turned his head. Master Sio, what do you mean? Are you afraid to let me check? I'm afraid that Protector Song Sio would do something that you would regret. Sio Taiying snorted. If Chu Li's injury worsens, don't blame me for being rude. Could it be that the ancestor had protected the great ancestor and established the great Ji dynasty, so that the younger generation could be bullied like this? Humph, I want to ask His Majesty in person. Do you think we're in the way and want to remove our public house? Song Siwen's face changed slightly. The relationship between the imperial family and the High Duke's public house was delicate. It was not something that the protectors of the imperial house could meddle with. Even the emperor and the empress had to give the House of Duke some face. At that time, he would be the unlucky one. He would definitely be pushed out to vent the resentment of the Mi public house. Sio Taiying waved his hand. Zhao Qingshan stared coldly at Song Siwen and slowly withdrew his hand. Song Siwen also glared at him coldly. He probed Chu Li's inner energy and found that his life force had dried up. A strange force was devouring his life force, causing him to slowly weaken and eventually die. Protector Song, do you recognize what kind of martial arts this is? Sio Taiying scoffed. Song Siwen looked at him hesitantly. Sio Taiying sneered. In this world, other than the perishable touch, what other martial art could be so vicious? Song Siwen's face darkened, and he remained silent. Elder Song, what kind of injury is it? A guard from the imperial house asked. Song Siwen raised his head and sighed. He looked at his 5 companions. It is indeed the perishable touch. He had a deep impression of the perishable touch. One of his best friends was struck by it, and he could only watch helplessly as he watched his friend die. Even the imperial family's spirit medicine could not stop the perishable touch from devouring and destroying it. He looked at Chu Li with sympathy and shook his head. There was no need to pursue the matter further. After being struck by the perishable touch, Chu Li would definitely die. If he was struck by it, the famous spirit blessing pill of the House of Duke might be able to save his life. However, looking at his injury, it was at least 4 fingers. No matter how miraculous the spirit blessing pill was, it would not be able to save his life. Perishable touch. The 5 imperial house protectors' faces changed. As the imperial house protectors, they had conflicts with the Tempest Temple and had experienced the power of the Tempest Temple. No less than 10 of their companions had died under the perishable touch. They looked at Chu Li strangely. Chu Li smiled. This finger force, this is the work of High Official Zhao. High Official Zhao would never collude with the disciples of the Tempest Temple. Song Siwen scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. If he did not lure me out of the town, I would not have gone out to die. If he did not stop me from seeing the disciples of the Tempest Temple, I would have escaped long ago. How could I have been struck by the perishable touch? Sio Taiying said coldly. Everyone, is Chu Li joking with the perishable touch? All right, he is weak now and cannot speak much. Let's talk outside. Before Song Siwen left, he turned to look at Chu Li and shook his head. After being struck by so many perishable touches, he would definitely die. What a pity! Chu Li waited for them to leave and immediately began to circulate his spiritual energy to suppress the aura of the perishable touch. The perishable touch was indeed extremely poisonous. It was like a maggot attached to the bone, unable to be eliminated. Instead, it grew stronger day by day. Fortunately, he had the life and death scripture, and the glories will tree to harvest vitality and spiritual energy to fight against it. He estimated that if it was someone else who was struck by a few fingers, they would have died by now. A small boat floated on the lake. Su Ru and Shui stood on the small boat. As soon as they reached the shore, they floated into the small courtyard. One on the left and the other on the right, they helped Chu Li onto the small boat. They then drove the boat back to the Jade Guardian Island and entered the Glories Will courtyard. As soon as he stepped into the Glories Will courtyard, Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief. The pure aura of the Glories Will tree surged into his body and immediately suppressed the perishable touch. The Glories Will tree was indeed strange. If it was not for it, he would not have dared to put on the show just now. However, the aura of the Glories Will tree was able to suppress the perishable touch. Master, how was it? Did they believe you? Shui and Su Ru carefully placed him on the bed and asked curiously, "Did we pass?" Chu Li smiled and looked towards the direction of the Iron Eagle Island. "It's all up to Master Sio." Sio Taiying brought everyone back to the main hall of the Iron Eagle Island. After they sat down, he said coldly, "Protector Song, do you understand now? You still want to capture Chu Li?" Master Sio, after all, Brother Zhao died in the territory of the public house. Song Siwen's tone softened and sighed. "It's useless for you to make things difficult for us. The guilty party is the first to complain." Sio Taiying scoffed. "I wanted to ask the emperor for an explanation to the public house. Why did the high officials from the imperial house want to assassinate the higher-ups of the public house? High-ranking..." Song Siwen laughed. "He's so young. How can he be considered as a high-ranking official?" Lin Quan closed fist saluted and smiled. "Protector Song, Chu Li is a rank 3 scribe." "Rank 3? Song Siwen frowned. Sio Taiying scoffed. "Although he's young, he has many meritorious deeds. The public house has always been based on talent. The promotion of a scribe's rank does not depend on one's background or anything else, only on one's meritorious deeds." "That's a real talent." Song Siwen shook his head and sighed. "What a pity, what a pity." "What's a pity?" Sio Taiying scoffed. "You still won't let him go?" Song Siwen sighed. "Master Sio, it's not that we won't let him go, it's that the perishable touch won't let him go. He's been hit by 4 perishable touches. He's dead for sure." Chapter 165. "Young Master, we still have things to do, so we can't leave." Song Siwen shook his head. "We have to go to the outskirts to see where they fought." "Are you guys still suspecting Chu Li?" Sio Taiying said coldly. "I think you guys are just bullying the weak and afraid of the strong. You guys don't have the guts to deal with the Tempest Temple." "Eldest young master, that's not right." Song Siwen's face darkened as he scoffed. "If it's really the Tempest Temple's doing, of course we'll settle the score with these monks." "You want to settle the score with the Tempest Temple?" Sio Taiying cast a sidelong glance at them and sneered. "You talk big. I don't think you dare to speak the truth." "Young master, what do you mean?" Song Siwen frowned. Sio Taiying scoffed. "Do you really think that I cannot see the wound on High Official Zhao's chest?" Song Siwen's face turned gloomy as he snorted. "I don't understand what you're saying. You guys have frequent dealings with the monks from the Tempest Temple. I don't believe you guys can't tell." Sio Taiying sneered. "That's the spear finger strike." Song Siwen's face darkened as he sneered at Sio Taiying. "So, Master Sio has set us up. Who knew that you would be so stupid as to crawl in so obediently?" Sio Taiying scoffed. "You obviously recognized us. Why didn't you say anything? Are you afraid that I'll find out? Are you trying to frame Chu Li? Or are you afraid of becoming enemies with the Tempest Temple?" Song Siwen snorted. "There are some things that you don't have to say so clearly. Everyone knew about the Imperial Court's apprehension towards the Tempest Temple. If they were to fight against the Tempest Temple, not only would they not gain any benefits, but they would also suffer heavy casualties. They felt aggrieved and resentful, but also fearful and apprehensive. It would be best if they did not fight against the Tempest Temple. Co Taiying said, "You guys are really embarrassing. The imperial court can't do anything to the sections. It's all because of your incompetence. Don't you understand how powerful the great Tempest Temple is?" Song Siwen said, "They're hunting down your public house's rank 3 scribe. Chu Li is about to die, and your public house dares to find trouble with them?" "Who said that Chu Li would die?" Co Taiying said coldly. "He will recover very soon." Song Siwen curled his lips and shook his head. "Young master, we all know the power of the perishable touch. He's dead for sure. Eldest young master, whether you agree or not, will have to go out of the city tomorrow to take a look. Fine, it's up to you." Co Taiying scoffed. "Chu Li cannot move. Look for it yourselves." Song Siwen took a deep breath to suppress his anger. Before he came, he was already mentally prepared. The relationship between the 12 public houses and the imperial court was subtle. It was not surprising that Co Taiying did not take them seriously. "We want to take a break," Song Siwen said. Co Taiying said, "Lin Quan, bring them to rest." "Yes." Lin Quan stepped forward with a smile and cupped his fists. "The 6 of you, please follow me. We will go to the abode." Song Siwen and the other 5 gave a fist salute to Co Taiying and left the hall without saying a word. Co Taiying sat coldly on his armchair as he watched them leave. As soon as they left, he immediately stood up and paced around, shouting, "Men!" A maid came to the door lightly. "Young master, invite third miss over." "Yes." Shao Qi, dressed in white, came over. Seeing Co Taiying's restless appearance, she said lightly, "Big brother, is the situation not good? Chu Li is too bold. He actually accused Zhao Zilai of colluding with the Tempest Temple to ambush him." Co Taiying shook his head. "I thought he would say that he did not know anything. He only cared about escaping. Did they believe him?" "Doubtful." Co Taiying shook his head. "These people are very observant. They are also afraid of the Tempest Temple. The rest is just wrangling. I will make a scene. They are looking for you because of the perishable touch. They said that Chu Li will definitely die. If he is hit by the perishable touch 4 times, he will definitely die. I think it is not a lie. The Imperial House protectors had a lot of dealings with the Tempest Temple. Many of them had died in the hands of the Tempest Temple. Their words were trustworthy. Perishable touch. Shao Qi frowned. She sat on the armchair and sighed. It is indeed troublesome. Can Chu Li hold on? Co Taiying quickly asked. Shao Qi pondered and said, looking at Chu Li's expression, he should be fine. When he saved second eldest sister, Elder Guo also predicted that he would die. Yet he managed to hold on. He will recover quickly. Elder Guo also said that his vitality is much stronger than ordinary people. That's good. Co Taiying let out a long sigh of relief. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. This Chu Li is he really didn't know what to say, so he didn't have anything to say. His ability to cause trouble was even better. He became enemies with the Tempest Temple and killed the Imperial House high official. He was really bold. Third younger sister, do you have any ideas? Co Taiying asked. Shao Qi shook her head. He has also cultivated the heart healing technique. His boundary is higher than mine. There will be no problem. Co Taiying said, do you want to assign him a maid? Of course, they had to win over such an outstanding talent and make sure that he was loyal to them. Xueling did a good job. Shao Qi said, how about letting Su Ru stay by his side? Co Taiying said, I see that Su Ru treats Chu Li very well. Shao Qi gave him a sidelong glance. Co Taiying laughed. I'm just saying, It's fine if you don't agree. Big brother, don't you dare have any ideas about Suru. Xiaoqi scoffed. How about letting him be the chief of Symphony Island? Xiao Taiying said. I see that he likes second younger sister very much. Big brother. Xiaoqi's face darkened. Xiao Taiying quickly waved his hand. All right, just pretend that I didn't say anything. Through this incident, he had a clearer understanding of Chu Li's talent. He could do what others could not. He was only an innate master now. In the future, if he stepped into the Grand Master's boundary, the public house would be like a tiger with wings. Chu Li was at the age of youth. What could be better than a woman to tie him down? If second older sister heard what you said, she would never see Chu Li again. Xiaoqi scoffed. Are you saying that you want to marry second older sister to him? Younger sister, you're really daring. Xiao Taiying laughed. Of course, as long as second younger sister agrees, it's not impossible. Chu Li is really not an ordinary person. Second older sister is proud and arrogant. She doesn't like Chu Li. Xiaoqi shook her head. But Chu Li is her savior. A savior is a savior. Chu Li is still a public house guard. No matter what, second older sister will never like him. Xiaoqi shook her head and sighed. She treats Chu Li as a subordinate. She doesn't see him as a man. Aren't you the same? Xiao Taiying shook his head and smiled. Xiaoqi shook her head. My heart technique doesn't allow me to fall in love. It's different from second older sister. Sigh. Xiao Taiying sighed. I don't know if second younger sister can make it through this. After fighting for so long, it was all for the sake of unsealing the vitality sealing finger for second younger sister. Now that the Imperial House high official's path was blocked, there was still no news from the Thunder Guiding Blade. Second younger sister's fate was full of misfortunes. It was really pitiful. The Imperial House protectors were in a hurry. After lunch, they left Chongming Town and went outside the town to look for the scene of Chu Li's fight. When they returned in the evening, they came to Iron Eagle Island with gloomy faces. Xiao Taiying stood at the entrance of the hall and fist saluted. After sitting down, he took a sip of tea and said leisurely, Have you found the place? We met someone. He said he saw Chu Li kill Brother Zhao with his own eyes. Song Siwen put down his teacup and said calmly. Xiao Taiying frowned. His face gradually darkened. So, you still want to frame Chu Li? There's no other way. That person said it very clearly. Song Siwen said coldly. Xiao Taiying sneered. I'd like to see who's spouting such nonsense. The person has been sent to the fairy's capital. Song Siwen said calmly. Chapter 166. Good, good. You guys act first and report later. Xiao Taiying was so angry that he laughed. He said coldly, You guys are afraid that I will confront him, right? Master Xiao, this is a serious matter. We can't make the decision. Song Siwen shook his head calmly. As for the confrontation, let Chu Li confront the emperor himself. The emperor can see everything clearly. If Chu Li really did not do anything, he will prove his innocence. Confront the emperor himself. Xiao Taiying laughed coldly. Only you guys can think of that. Chu Li can't handle any bumps now. He will definitely die on the way to the fairy's capital. What evil intentions! Master Xiao, you've wronged us. Song Siwen shook his head. We believe that Chu Li is innocent, but even if there is a witness, things will be different. We dare not hide anything. You don't have to hide anything. As long as you keep your eyes open, keep your heads clear, and don't mess things up. Xiao Taiying laughed coldly. Think about it. How could there be such a coincidence? He just happened to see what happened and coincidentally met you guys. Who is he? A woodcutter. Song Siwen thought for a while and said slowly, A woodcutter? Xiao Taiying laughed. They can see the speed of a grandmaster's attack. How could they know who killed who? Did he see Chu Li kill High Official Zhao with his own eyes? Yes. Song Siwen nodded. Co. Taiying said. Then did he see Chu Li being chased by the Tempest Temple? Yes. Song Siwen said. He said that the monks from the Tempest Temple appeared later. They were not with Brother Zhao. Logically speaking, these things should not be disclosed. However, he also felt that the woodcutter's appearance was too coincidental. It was a little strange. After sending the people away, he was a little hesitant. He felt that he had been tricked. Co. Taiying laughed coldly. This is even more ridiculous. Why would the Tempest Temple collude with High Official Zhao? It's because Chu Li's light body technique is too powerful. They can't catch up with Chu Li. If Chu Li killed High Official Zhao first, he would have escaped long ago. He won't be hurt. Master Co., how powerful is Chu Li's light body technique? Song Siwen shook his head and laughed. If he wants to escape, no one can catch up with him. Co. Taiying scoffed. It's not like you don't know how powerful the monks from the Temple of Tempest are. Why have we failed to kill them so many times? Song Siwen frowned and said, Is it difficult for us to see it? What do you think of his current appearance? Co. Taiying snapped. Song Siwen spread his hands helplessly and said, Then there is nothing we can do. It all depends on whether the Emperor believes it or not. You guys are really stupid. Co. Taiying sneered. You're afraid that I'll kill that bastard to silence him. That's why you did such a thing, right? Even if Chu Li really did kill High Official Zhao, he would not be able to do anything about it. So what? Song Siwen's face darkened. Young master, Co. Taiying sneered. If Chu Li really killed High Official Zhao and I want to protect him, what would the Emperor do? Why should I waste my breath on you? Think about it. You really don't have a brain. He glanced disdainfully at Song Siwen and the others. Song Siwen and the other 5 looked gloomy and extremely angry. Even if it was the king's mansion, it was a serious matter if they wanted to kill a guardian of the imperial palace. They would not let them off lightly. However, the position of the House of High Dukes was transcendent, and their relationship with the imperial family was subtle. Even if he really killed the imperial house's minister of offerings, the royal family might not make a big deal out of it. Co. Taiying said, Don't tell me you guys want to witness Chu Li's light body technique. Chu Li is heavily injured now, so let's let his subordinates show off. Lin Quan, let Jiang Kuai chase after that guy. Yes, Lin Quan replied. Song Siwen's face was gloomy as he snorted. Young master, you really know how to joke. It's been half a day since you sent him away. There's no need to waste your time. Your light body technique might not be good, but the protectors of the House of High Dukes are not. Co. Taiying scoffed. I'd like to see who this person is. You didn't ask clearly before sending yourself to the Emperor. Aren't you afraid of being punished? Song Siwen frowned and said nothing. He was also muttering to himself. If he really made a mistake, it would be a great sin. Previously, they were only thinking of not letting this person fall into the hands of the High Duke's public house and be killed, so they sent him away, using the special passage of the Imperial House Guards. It was stealthy and fast. Now that he thought about it, it was indeed a little impulsive and irrational. Especially after hearing Co. Taiying's explanation, there were indeed many flaws. Early in the morning, the sun shone brightly. Song Siwen and the others had just woken up. Before they could even cultivate, they were invited to Iron Eagle Island. When they stepped into the main hall, they saw a middle-aged man in gray standing in the middle of the hall. Their expressions changed slightly as they looked at Co. Taiying. Co. Taiying sat in the armchair with a cold smile on his face. Lin Quan stood behind him, smiling and nodding at them with a humble face. Young master, You really got him back. Song Siwen scoffed. He had mixed feelings. He was a little relieved, but also afraid. In front of the House of High Dukes, this passage was not secret. Co Taiying said, "Don't forget, this is Chongming Road." "I've told Chu Li." He said that he only needs to ask this guy a question. "What question?" Song Siwen scoffed. Co Taiying said coldly, "How far away did he see Chu Li and Zhao Zilai fighting?" He turned his head and stared at the middle-aged man in gray. "Tell me, how far away were you from them?" The middle-aged man in gray looked ordinary. His skin was tanned, and his eyes were honest. He was frightened by Co Taiying's imposing manner and did not dare to speak. He lowered his head tightly. Song Siwen said calmly, "It's okay, just tell me the truth. How far away did you see it?" I don't know how far away it was. Maybe about 10 feet. I saw it from behind a rock." The middle-aged man in gray stuttered. He. Co Taiying laughed and looked at Song Siwen. Song Siwen frowned. He pointed outside the door. "How about this? Look outside from here. Which place is about the same as what you saw?" The middle-aged man in gray looked outside, thought for a while, and said, "It's about the same as that fake mountain." Co Taiying laughed and said, "Protector Song, is this the witness you found? What a joke." Song Siwen's face turned ugly. It was only 10 feet away. For grandmasters and innate masters, it was almost right in front of them. It was impossible not to notice. Chu Li's flying knife was said to be very powerful. If he really killed Zhao Zilai, he could have killed the woodcutter with one knife. How could he be a witness? The middle-aged woodcutter saw that Song Siwen's expression was not right. He quickly said, "It could be a little further. I'm just guessing." Co Taiying shook his head and said, "Say it. Who asked you to say these things? If you tell the truth now, the public house will spare your life. If you lie and we find out, you won't be able to live." The middle-aged woodcutter quickly looked at Song Siwen. Song Siwen frowned. "Someone really asked you to do this?" This. The middle-aged woodcutter thought that he could hold on, but Co Taiying's imposing manner was like a mountain pressing down on him. He could not breathe. Song Siwen looked at him and became more and more suspicious. He said in a low voice, "If you tell the truth, we won't pursue this matter." Chapter 167. Speak, Co Taiying shouted. The middle-aged woodcutter lowered his head and whispered, A few days ago, someone came to me and told me to say this. As long as I said this, I would be given 100 silver taels." "Who are they? What do they look like?" Co Taiying scoffed. The middle-aged woodcutter thought for a moment. "He's in his 30s, tall and skinny, and looks very refined. Forget it. It's useless to ask about this." Co Taiying waved his hand and scoffed. 100 taels of silver? Do you think that 100 taels of silver is so easy to earn? I'm afraid that you'll lose your life even if you have the money. All right, go back and be a good woodcutter from now on. Don't think about making a fortune. A fortune is a calamity. Yes, many thanks to eldest young master. Many thanks to eldest young master. The middle-aged woodcutter seemed as if he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly kowtowed a few more times. "Guard Song, what else do you have to say?" Co Taiying turned his head and glared at Song Siwen. He said coldly, "Someone wants to harm Chu Li and frame him. Their intentions are extremely sinister." Song Siwen stared coldly at the middle-aged woodcutter, causing him to break out in cold sweat. Co Taiying sneered. "What's funny is that as a guard of the imperial house, you were fooled by a man from the mountains. You've brought shame to the imperial house. It's a shame that I've brought him back." Song Siwen was also very angry. Co Taiying's words were like a slap to his face. His cheeks were burning hot. He wished he could slap Co Taiying to death. Co Taiying was not going to let it go. He sneered, "You should thank me. If you really went to the emperor, you would probably be kicked out of the imperial palace protectors." "Hey, thank you, young master." Song Siwen sneered. Co Taiying glared at him and scoffed, "You don't know what's good for you." "Master Xiao Taiying, who did it?" Song Siwen changed the topic. "This person must have a huge grudge against Chu Li," Co Taiying said, "the Tempest Temple and the Ren Public House. It should be the Ren Public House's doing. The monks of the Tempest Temple rarely use these kinds of methods." "Chu Li offended the Ren Public House. Don't you know our relationship with the Ren Public House?" Co Taiying said snappily, "They've taken advantage of Chu Li twice. They can't wait to get rid of him." Song Siwen nodded slowly. They had learned about this before they came. The public houses of Yi and Run were fighting fiercely. Co Taiying laughed coldly. "That woman Lu Yurong has no scruples. If it weren't for the fact that she's a woman, I would have killed her long ago." Song Siwen smiled lightly. It was not that Co Taiying did not want to kill Lu Yurong, but he could not. Lu Yurong almost never left the house. Moreover, her methods were brilliant and her bodyguards were strong. Lu Yurong, on the other hand, almost killed the second lady of the Yi public house. Co Taiying scoffed. "You've all been used by Lu Yurong." Song Siwen and the other 5 were also furious. They had almost been fooled by such a simple trick. He had actually been fooled by a woman. Chu Li was lying on a low bed under the Gloriesville tree. The sun was setting and the courtyard was dyed red. He squinted his eyes and felt the force of the Gloriesville tree. At the same time, he was feeling the force of the perishable touch. The Gloriesville tree was overflowing with vitality, while the finger of Nirvana was lifeless, constantly devouring vitality to strengthen itself. The aura of the perishable finger seemed to have a life of its own. It was quiet during the day and active at night. The aura of the Gloriesville tree was active during the day and even more active at night. It absorbed sunlight during the day and moonlight at night. The sunlight made it strong, and the moonlight made it grow. Chu Li felt more and more exquisite under the contrast of the force of the perishable touch. He was heavily injured and fully felt the wonders of the force of the Gloriesville tree. Feeling the perishable touch, he had a deeper understanding of the scripture of life and death. Life and death. Growth. A subtle understanding gradually grew in his heart. He felt that he had touched the door to the second level of the scripture of life and death. Shui pushed the door open and sat on the edge of Chu Li's bed. Her faint body fragrance floated over. The sunset dyed her white face a rosy red, as if intoxicated. She was delicate and charming. "Master, Brother Jiang said that he has done what you asked." Chu Li opened his eyes and nodded. Shui asked curiously, "Master, what did you ask Brother Jiang to do?" Chu Li smiled. Shui became even more curious. "Master!" At this moment, footsteps were heard from outside. Suru pushed the door open and came in. She looked at Chu Li with a smile. "Good news." Shui got up and bowed. She quickly asked, "Chief, what's the good news?" "Things have finally come to an end." Suru pursed her lips and smiled. "This group of Imperial House protectors is sure that Chu Li is innocent. He did not kill Zhao Zilai." "Thank God! Thank God!" Shui put her palms together and let out a long sigh of relief. She quickly went to the pagoda to get an embroidered stool. Suru, elegantly and dignified, sat on the embroidered stool and smiled. "It's all thanks to Lu Yurong's plan. She found someone to identify Chu Li and wanted to kill him. In the end, Master Xiao Taiying intercepted the person and revealed the truth with just a few words." Master Xiao Taiying is so powerful? Shui was surprised. Suru smiled. Master Xiao Taiying is not powerful. Master Xiao Taiying is wise and powerful. Shui smiled sweetly. Suru rolled her eyes at her and looked at Chu Li. This time, you can rest in peace and recover as soon as possible. Lady Xiao Taiying said that she wants you to accompany her to find the Thunder Guiding Blade. Has the Thunder Guiding Blade been found? Not yet. Lady Xiao Taiying wants to go. Yes, Lady Xiao Taiying said that Master Xiao Taiying wants to stay in the public house. It's best if she goes. She wants you to follow her too, so you have to recover as soon as possible. If there's really news about the Thunder Guiding Blade, you have to leave immediately. Why would I want to join in the fun? Just let Lady Xiao Taiying bring a few more grandmasters. You can say that to Lady Xiao Taiying. Suru rolled her eyes at him and suddenly smiled. Lu Yurong also has times where she overreaches herself. This time, it's all thanks to her. Even a wise man would make a mistake. Chu Li smiled and nodded. This time, I really have to thank Lu Yurong. Humph, what an insidious woman. She must be furious that she failed at the last moment. Suru rolled her eyes at him and stood up. Do you need any spirit medicine? Chu Li said, I don't need any spirit medicine. I'll slowly heal myself. All right then. Suru stood up and said, Let's go. Shui quickly stood up and sent him off. Shui returned to Chu Li's bed and sat on the edge of the bed. She put a piece of watermelon into his mouth. Master, what did you ask Brother Jiang to do? Chu Li smiled and did not answer. If you don't tell me, I'll ask Brother Jiang. He'll tell me. Shui scoffed. Chu Li smiled. You can't tell anyone about this. Of course. Shui patted her full chest. Chu Li said, Actually, it's nothing much. I just helped Lu Yurong. Help Lu Yurong? Shui blinked her big bright eyes. She was confused. How did you help her? Chu Li said, I helped her find a witness. Shui's eyes suddenly widened. She pointed at Chu Li. That witness was found by you, Master? Chu Li smiled. Shui blinked her big bright eyes and thought for a while. Then she shook her head and sighed. Master, you're too? I was worried for a long time. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Chapter 168. Chu Li was actually not satisfied. Only when they confronted each other in front of the emperor would he be able to unleash his killing power. It was a pity that he could not attack Lu Yurong now. He did not like to be defensive. He liked to take the initiative and attack first. Lu Yurong had plotted against him time and time again, and he had always wanted to fight back. This was a good opportunity, but man proposes, God disposes. He did not expect the House of High Dukes to have such a powerful background that they were able to intercept the witness. All his schemes had gone down the drain, and there was nothing to brag about. It was not that he did not want to talk to Master Xiao Taiying. However, with Master Xiao Taiying's personality, he would never agree to it. He could only do it in secret. The next morning, Chu Li was channeling under the glories will tree to heal his wounds and wear down the perishable finger. He was not in a hurry. Shui pushed the door open and entered with light steps. She sat in front of the bed and smiled. Master, they've left. Chu Li opened his eyes. Shui's cold face was inches away from him. Her breath smelled like orchids. He leaned back slightly. They've left so soon? They are too ashamed to stay here. Shui wrinkled her nose and scoffed. They came so aggressively and left with their tails between their legs. How satisfying. Chu Li said, It's good that they've left. It's not worth it to make things ugly. You didn't see how arrogant they were. Shui scoffed. They wanted to take you down the moment they arrived. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. They were just bluffing. All right, go and meet Sun Jun and Wang Shuani. Thank them for me. Okay, Shuen nodded. Do you want to give them something? When I recover, I'll meet them again. Chu Li said, let's see what they want. They want silver. Xueling pouted her red lips. These protectors spend money so extravagantly. They never have enough money because it was easy for protectors to earn silver and spend it quickly. They rarely saved it. Often, after a mission, they would spend it without restraint. They would buy houses, find beauties, and eat good food and wine. It was too easy to spend money in Chongming town. No matter how much money they had, it would never be enough. Chu Li shook his head. How about this? Give them 2 spirit blessing pills, 1 for each. Is that necessary? Shui hesitated. The spirit blessing pill was a priceless treasure to the guards. He could only get 1 every year, and it had to be under the condition that he did not make any mistakes during the mission. If there were any mistakes, this spirit blessing pill would be gone. Missions that required the deployment of the High Duke's public house's protectors were never easy. He wouldn't come here for nothing. Chu Li said, they've saved my life. I don't think so, Xueling said. Someone will save him anyway. Once the House of High Duke's guards fell in the city, no one would stand by and watch. She still could not bear to part with the spirit blessing pill. 1 pill was 1 life. Her master had always been hunted by the Tempest Temple, and the Ren public house also saw him as a thorn in their side. He could be in danger at any time, so the spirit blessing pill was too crucial. Chu Li glared at her. Xueling scoffed unwillingly. All right, 1 spirit blessing pill for each of you. In a fit of pique, she got up and went into the house. She took out 2 jade vases and put 1 spirit blessing pill in each. Then I'll go now. Go. Chu Li waved his hand. Xueling rolled her eyes at him and left the courtyard. It would be best if he gave it to her now, so that she would not be unhappy. The small boat swayed gently and floated away from the Jade Guardian Island to the Hall of Martial Arts. The training field of the Hall of Martial Arts was at its busiest. Xueling's white dress fluttered as she stood at the side of the field. Her clear eyes swept around. Xueling often came to the Hall of Martial Arts. Everyone was used to it. No one dared to talk to her. They all pretended not to see her and practiced even more happily. It was a man's nature to show off his excellence in front of a beauty. Xueling's eyes lit up when she saw Sun Jun and Wang Shuani. They were holding a bladeless knife and sparring. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand, and every move was fatal. She walked forward. The people in front of her consciously made a path for her. She walked straight to the front of the 2. Sun Jun and Wang Shuani felt her bright gaze, and the fight became more intense. Xueling did not speak and looked at the 2 quietly. They thought that Xueling was just casually watching. The nature of young people made them like peacocks spreading their feathers. Their moves became more and more fierce. Xueling watched for a while, and they felt something was wrong. They stopped and closed fist saluted. Miss Xueling, Xueling said, Brother Sun, Brother Wang, my master is seriously injured and can't move. He asked me to come and express his gratitude. No, Sun Jun quickly said, Chief Chu is too polite. This is a gift from my master. Xueling took out 2 white jade bottles from her sleeves and handed them to the 2. You don't have to be so polite. Take it. Sun Jun and Wang Shuani wanted to refuse, but Xueling kept her hand extended. Her hand and the jade bottle were so beautiful that they had no choice but to accept it. Miss Xueling, what is this? Sun Jun asked. Xueling shook her head. You'll know when you go back. Master said that he will thank you in person when he recovers. Chief Chu is too polite. It's nothing. It's what we should do, Sun Jun said. Wang Shuani nodded in agreement. Xue Ling said, "No matter what, you saved my master. Goodbye." She curtsied and turned to leave. Chapter 169. When Xue Ling returned to the courtyard, she saw Su Ru standing at the door. She was dressed in an apricot gown and was about to push the door open. "Chief," she called out, stepping forward and bowing. "Xue Ling, you went to the martial arts hall again?" Su Ru asked with a smile. Xue Ling said, "Thanks Sun Jun and Wang Shuani on behalf of Master. Give them a spirit blessing pill. Chu Li Sure is generous." Su Ru shook her head and laughed. Xue Ling scoffed. "What Master wants to do, who can stop him?" Su Ru pursed her lips and smiled. "Look at how distressed you are. Don't worry. How can he be lacking in spirit blessing pills?" As they spoke, they pushed open the door and entered the courtyard. Chu Li was sitting cross-legged on the low couch under the glories will tree, channeling. He was like an old monk in meditation, looking solemn. He slowly opened his eyes and smiled at Su Ru. Then he glanced at Xue Ling. Xue Ling quickly said, "I've already given it to them. Don't worry, I'll be nice." Only then did Chu Li nod in satisfaction. Su Ru said, "Chu Li, you have to heal faster. We've found traces of the thunder guiding blade. Lady Xiao will depart tomorrow." "You found it so fast?" Chu Li was surprised. A grandmaster's hideout was so easily found. Even the House of High Dukes felt that it was too easy. Su Ru smiled. "I'm just lucky. I didn't expect to find it so soon." "How did you find it?" "A guard overheard it while he was on a mission. He asked around and found out that the thunder guiding saber had appeared in the Fengming Mountain area." Su Ru said, "I don't know the exact location, but he should be staying at Mount Fengming. Lady Xiao wants us to go there and look for him, so as not to alert the enemy." Chu Li asked, "Is there such a coincidence?" "Maybe God is helping Second Lady." Su Ru smiled. Chu Li shook his head and furrowed his brows. "Chu Li, aren't you happy to hear this news?" Su Ru tilted her head and looked at him. "Why do you look like that?" "I'm just afraid that my love will be for nothing," Chu Li said. Su Ru said, "We have to hide this from the Second Lady for now. When the Second Lady finds the thunder guiding blade, we will tell her. When will your injury recover? Can you make it in time tomorrow? If you can't make it in time, Miss can go by herself." Chu Li's frown deepened. Su Ru said, "Don't worry. Of course, I'll bring a few grandmasters with me." Chu Li pondered for a moment. "All right, we'll depart tomorrow. Your injury can be healed." "Yes, let's try. Don't mess around," Su Ru said. "Lady Xiao said that you have to heal your wounds bit by bit. You can't rush it." "I have an idea," Chu Li said. "Very well. I'll go and inform Mississippi." Su Ru looked at him worriedly and got up to leave. Early the next morning, the sun rose and the golden rays illuminated the small courtyard with a golden hue. Under the glories will tree, Chu Li woke up from his meditation. After a night of hard work, the finger of annihilation was removed. Previously, he was healing his injuries bit by bit because he wanted to feel the mysteriousness of the perishable touch and understand the meaning of withering. He was worried that Shao Qi would search for the thunder guiding blade alone, so he could only bear the pain and completely dispel the perishable touch. Chu Li wanted to be with Shao Qi, not because he was worried about her intelligence. She had the ability to see through people's hearts, so it was not easy for her to be fooled. However, if he was by her side, he could bring her away at the crucial moment. Of the 36 stratagems, escape was the best strategy. It was considered another insurance. Shao Qi and Su Ru stepped into the small courtyard. Her white clothes fluttered in the wind, and her fragrance was refreshing. She looked at Chu Li quietly. "Are your injuries really healed?" Chuli nodded. Xiao Qi sat on the edge of the bed, and her slender fingers touched his wrist. She felt his strong inner energy and nodded in satisfaction. Chu Li felt half of his body go numb when her cool fingers touched his wrist. He tried to suppress his heartbeat, not wanting Xiao Qi to notice anything. It's really much better. Xiao Qi let go of her slender fingers and nodded slightly. Follow me to Phoenix Mountain? Chu Li smiled. Of course. Xiao Qi said, the Tempest Temple is probably still looking for an opportunity to kill you. Chu Li smiled and did not answer. He was not afraid of being hunted by the Tempest Temple. He just had to be more careful next time. All right, just the two of us. Xiao Qi muttered, go quickly and come back quickly. We'll sneak away unknowingly, and there will be fewer twists and turns. Chu Li said, Mississippi, it's better to bring some Grandmaster protectors. Xiao Qi frowned and looked at him. Chu Li said, I'm worried that Lu Yurong is not involved in this. What if this thunder guiding blade was done by Lu Yurong? Xiao Qi was stunned. Although she was smart, she was not good at scheming. She was good at observing and countering every move. She was not good at taking the initiative to plot against others. She was far from Lu Yurong. Chu Li shook his head. Even without Lu Yurong's interference, we still have to be wary of this thunder guiding blade. It's hard to tell what's in a man's heart. More than 10 years have passed. Who knows what changes have happened between Thunder Guiding Blade and the High Duke? Xiao Qi was deep in thought. Since Chu Li mentioned it, she really had to be wary. Lu Yurong was full of tricks and schemes. If Chu Li could predict it, Lu Yurong could. Chu Li stared at her. After a while, Xiao Qi shook her head. It's still the two of us. Chu Li smiled helplessly. Xiao Qi said, if it's really Lu Yurong's plan, the two of us will leave when we see that the situation is not good. With Elder Zhao and the others, it's not good to have too many people involved. Chapter 170. The two of them only walked on small paths where there were few people. The two horses were spirited, and their hoofs were wrapped in iron, so they were not afraid of gravel and rugged terrain. They ran for the whole morning and turned into an official road at noon. They went to a post house by the roadside to rest. The post house was located in the woods by the road. The shade of the trees blocked the scorching sun and the wind. It was a little stuffy. The two of them had reached the realm of being immune to heat and cold, so they sat at the stone table in the small pavilion. After drinking water, Chu Li put down his water bag and opened his bag to take out some jerky and dry food. Xiao Qi took off her white veil and revealed her beautiful face. She gently chewed the jerky. Now, we should get rid of those with bad intentions. She ran for the whole morning, but her body was still spotless. She was like a fairy who did not eat the food of the world. She chewed slowly and elegantly. Chu Li nodded, almost. I hope it goes well this time. Xiao Qi said, second eldest sister has suffered too much. There should be a good ending. Chu Li sighed. Xiao Qi glanced at him. Are you sure you can unlock the vitality ceiling finger? More than others. If it really doesn't work, you can try. Xiao Qi said lightly, if this thunder guiding blade is a trick of the Rin Public House, and we ran for nothing, I will persuade Big Brother to let you come. Chu Li slowly said, I hope it is not for nothing. If second eldest sister can unlock the vitality ceiling finger this time, I can also leave with peace of mind. Leave. Chu Li stopped a piece of jerky by his mouth. Lady, where are you going? Isolated cultivation to break through the Grandmaster's boundary. Xiao Qi said, I have perfected the innate mastery. It is useless to delay. Chu Li smiled. Which faction do you want to join, lady? Xiao Qi slightly raised her eyebrows. Chu Li said, I know bits and pieces. Only by entering the faction's arcane realm will there be hope to break through to the Grand Master's boundary. Right? Yes, I want to enter the faction incognito. Shao-Chi nodded. Enter the faction and spend a few years to break through to the Grand Master's boundary as soon as possible. A few years? Chuli was surprised. That long? It depends on fate and luck. Shao-Chi said, you might be able to understand it overnight, or it might take years or even decades or even a lifetime. Everyone's fate is different. Is it dangerous? Chuli frowned. Shao-Chi said, he faked his death to escape and changed his appearance. There's no danger. Lu Yurong will not let go of this opportunity. Lu Yurong would not let go of this opportunity. Faking death to escape was not surprising. Aunt Xiao used it once. Lu Yurong will be able to predict it. Xiao 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 Su Clan is, and Xiao 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 Master. Looks like I have to divert Lu Yurong's attention. Chuli said thoughtfully, I can't just sit there and not fight back. I have to take the initiative to attack. Big brother, you. His face is covered in dirt. Lu Yurong's beating scared him. You. Chuli shook his head and said, playing tricks with Lu Yurong is playing against her strengths. It's hard to gain any advantage. It's my duty. Chuli nodded. When you enter the sect, I will try my best to keep Lu Yurong busy so that she can't be distracted. But when it comes to scheming, I am not as good as her. It's inevitable that we'll suffer losses. By the way, we should have quite a lot of contacts in the Rin public house, right? There are some. Shao-Chi furrowed her brows and shook her head. She won't be able to do much. Lu Yurong is very smart. She's very cautious when it comes to using people. Our informants can't even get close to her. Chuli sighed helplessly. Just like himself, the traitor could not stay put. Shao-Chi said, after I leave, I'll go back to my room. I'll give you the name list of the Rin public house's spies. Chuli nodded. Shao-Chi sighed. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll join Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chuli thought for a moment. Snow Lunar Pavilion at Snow Lunar Lake. Shao-Chi nodded. Chuli had heard of Snow Lunar Pavilion. It couldn't compare to the 4 great sects, but it was still the first-rate sect with a deep foundation. It had flourished for the past 1,000 years. Yin was more abundant than yang. The female disciples were the main ones, and the male disciples were the support. It had a good reputation in the martial arts world. However, Snow Lunar Pavilion was not on Chongming Road. It was on Chongdi Road, which was guarded by the Rin public house. Isn't it too risky? Because of this, it won't be found. Chuli sighed. It's still too dangerous. It doesn't matter. As long as it's completely cut off from the public house, no one will find out. But if it's really cut off, what if I encounter danger? I can handle it myself. Chuli smiled bitterly. Why don't I bring 2 grandmasters? Impossible. Shao-Chi shook her head. If I really bring grandmasters, I won't be able to stay for more than a few days. Chuli pondered. How about I join Snow Lunar Pavilion? Snow Lunar Pavilion doesn't suit you. Shao-Chi said, the public house is working hard to clear the way for you to enter Amethyst Mountain. Amethyst Mountain? Chuli couldn't help but be surprised. Amethyst Mountain was not an ordinary sect. The Tempest Temple, Green Deer Cliff, Titanium Temple, and Amethyst Mountain were known as the 4 great sections. They had thousands of years of inheritance, looked down on the martial arts world, and could compete with the imperial court. Shao-Chi nodded. It's not that easy to enter Amethyst Mountain. You have to wait patiently. There's no need to enter Amethyst Mountain, right? Chuli said, an ordinary sect is fine. My mother is acquainted with a disciple of Amethyst Mountain. Through his relationship, you can be sent in. Unfortunately, he's always in isolation, and I can't see him. When he comes out, it'll be done. It might take a year or two, or even a few years. Grandmasters usually go into isolation to break through to the enlightened mastery's boundary. So you don't have to rush. Chuli smiled. I'm just afraid that I won't have the opportunity. If he doesn't come out in 2 years, we'll think of another way. Xiao Qi said, I won't let you delay your advancement. Thank you, Lady Xiao. Chuli nodded and did not refuse. As the two were talking, 3 horses galloped from afar and stopped when they saw the post. The 3 riders in gray led the horses to the shade of a tree beside the post. The 3 of them were in their prime. They had long blades on their waists and had a fierce temperament. They stared greedily at Chu Li and Xiao Qi's mounts. Their eyes lit up as they sized them up, then they walked into the pagoda. When they approached, Xiao Qi had already put up a white veil to cover her face. However, her white robe fluttered in the wind, and her cold temperament was enough to attract attention. The 3 riders in gray stared at Xiao Qi. They could not wait to see her face through the white veil. Chuli coughed. This sound was like a clap of thunder, exploding in the ears of the 3 knights. Their blood and qi surged, and stars appeared before their eyes. Chuli looked at the 3 coldly. Their expressions changed slightly. They knew that they had met a tough opponent. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. They closed fist saluted, squeezed a smile, and sat aside. Chuli nodded in satisfaction and ignored them. Xiao Qi did not even look at them, as if she did not see them. Chapter 171. Chu Li and Xiao Qi finished their rations and dried meat and looked at the 2 horses outside the pavilion. The horses needed a good rest. His gaze swept across the 3 brawny men as if he was deep in thought. The 3 men were restless as if they had thorns all over their bodies. They wanted to leave immediately as they felt that Chu Li was up to no good. Xiao Qi also noticed his strange gaze and looked over. Chu Li said, They're not good people. Should we teach them a lesson? Xiao Qi's eyes focused and turned to the 3 men. She did not care about them before and did not even look at them as if they did not exist. Now that Chu Li reminded her, she looked at them for the first time. Master, we didn't offend you, did we? One of the ruddy-faced men closed fist saluted respectfully. Chu Li shook his head. You didn't offend me, but you've killed too many innocent people. Hee, you've wronged us. The ruddy-faced man quickly waved his hand and closed fist saluted. We're disciples of the Hornet Valley. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at Xiao Qi. The ruddy-faced man was lying. They were not disciples of the Hornet Valley. They were roving bandits. Xiao Qi said calmly, Cripple them. Yes. Chu Li nodded. He suddenly disappeared and appeared behind them. In an instant, he hit them with 3 palms. The force penetrated their dantian and crushed their meridians. They could no longer use their inner energy. You. The 3 men stared at Chu Li and Xiao Qi. They were filled with fear and anger. Chu Li looked at them. So many innocent people have died in your hands. Crippling you is already being kind. Xiao Qi said, The imperial court is too useless if they can't catch them. The 3 burly men were filled with anger and cursed inwardly that women's hearts were the most vicious. However, they clenched their teeth and didn't allow themselves to speak. Their lives were in their hands, and if they said another word, they might change their minds and directly take their lives. They watched as they staggered and climbed up the horses and left in a hurry. Chu Li shook his head. My lady, you're too kind. Xiao Qi glared at him. I have you. She could tell that Chu Li had done something. It seemed like he had only crippled their martial arts, but in fact, he had severely injured their internal organs. They reckoned that they didn't have much longer to live. They were going to die a violent death, their corpses strewn across the wilderness. Chu Li smiled and said, "This kind of scourge, it's only natural that I get rid of him. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda." Killing them was equivalent to saving countless innocent people. They were also enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. According to what he saw, there were at least 25 people who died in their hands, including the elderly, the weak, women, and children. Their martial arts were not that great, but they were cunning and hard to catch, and they were free and unfettered to this day. This scene was just an insignificant interlude for the two of them, and they quickly continued on their way. The 2 horses were extraordinarily spirited. They were fast and had great endurance. Coupled with the help of Chu Li and Shao Qi's inner energy, they were able to ride on the horses. At noon the next day, they arrived at the foot of Feng Ming Mountain. Feng Ming Mountain was an endless mountain range. If it weren't for the fact that the 2 of them had a high level of qigong, they wouldn't have come here to look for a needle in a haystack. They first settled the horses in a family at the foot of the mountain, and then entered the Feng Ming Mountain using qigong. Shao Qi originally planned to split up with Chu Li and look for an area each so that it would be faster. However, Chu Li insisted that the 2 of them stay together to prevent any sneak attacks. After all, they were not grandmasters. He needed to be more careful. Shao Qi finally agreed, and the 2 of them went from west to east, deep into the Feng Ming Mountain. Chu Li activated the omniscient mirror, and everything within a 3-mile radius was in front of him. Feng Ming Mountain was endless, but the peak was not high. He walked halfway up the mountain, and the entire peak was in front of him. Nothing on the mountain could hide, and everything appeared in his mind. The sun was shining brightly. The sunlight shone on the window, and the study room was bright and soft. Xiao Taiying was reading in the study room. He had been focusing on history books and wanted to improve his military strategy. The Run public house was aggressive, and the E public house was losing ground. If this continued, the public house would weaken in his hands. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and Lin Xuan's voice came in, "Master, the second lady has fainted." "What?" The book in Xiao Taiying's hand fell on the table. He quickly got up and opened the door. "What happened?" "The lady suddenly fainted when she was drinking medicine. Elder Gua asked me to tell Master Xiao that the lady is not in good condition." Lin Quan lowered his head and said. Xiao Taiying's face turned pale, and he hurriedly walked out. Lin Quan quickly followed. The 2 of them jumped onto a small boat, and in a short while they arrived at the Island of Symphony and went straight to the Whispering Wind Tower. There were a few maids standing in the hall on the first floor of the Whispering Wind Tower, and they looked anxious. When they saw Xiao Taiying rushing over, they quickly curtsied and greeted him. Xiao Taiying waved his hand and strode up the stairs. Lin Quan followed closely behind. Mulin was standing in front of the bed, looking down at the unconscious Xiao Shi. His face was gloomy. When he heard footsteps, he turned his head and closed fists saluted, "Master Xiao." "Second sister, she?" Xiao Taiying quickly asked. "Is she all right?" "Not too good." Mulin shook his head. "The medicine is not working. I have already given the second lady the spirit blessing pill, but with the spirit blessing pill, she should be fine, right?" Xiao Taiying quickly said. "Sigh." Mulin sighed. "Even the nature pill is useless now. The vitality sealing finger in the lady's body is getting stronger, and it has blocked the medicine from entering. The medicine is useless, and there is nothing we can do." "Is there no other way?" Xiao Taiying quickly said. "Third sister has already gone to look for the thunder guiding blade, and we'll be back soon. Can't she hold on? It's too late. Mulin smiled bitterly. Unless the thunder guiding blade is here now, or else, sigh, even if the thunder guiding blade is here now, it will be useless. How much longer does second sister have? Xiao Taiying sat in front of the bed and touched Xiao Shi's pale but beautiful face. His heart ached. Mulin sighed. I'm afraid she won't make it past tonight. Tonight, Xiao Taiying shouted. Mulin nodded with a gloomy face. I am useless. Why are you saying this? Xiao Taiying waved his hand and frowned. If the vitality sealing finger is undone now, can she still be saved? Mulin looked at him and sighed. The vitality sealing finger can't be undone in this situation. Why? Xiao Taiying asked in a low voice. Mulin said, to undo the vitality sealing finger, you need to use a gust of qi to directly clear all the acupuncture points in the body and not harm the other acupuncture points. But no matter how precise the inner energy is, it is impossible not to accidentally injure the body. With the second lady's current condition, if she is accidentally injured, she will die immediately. Lin Quan, go and find High Official Zhao. Xiao Taiying said. Yes, master, Lin Quan replied, and left quietly. Mulin shook his head. Master, it's useless. How will you know if you don't try? Xiao Taiying shook his head. Are you going to let her wait for death? Mulin sighed. Truly, this is my fault. I have been holding on to the hope of getting lucky. I should have undone the vitality sealing finger earlier. I shouldn't have delayed it for so long. It's my fault. Xiao Taiying looked at the unconscious Xiao Shi and mumbled to himself, I am not a good brother. I can't take good care of second sister. Mulin remained silent. If there was anything to blame, it could only be blamed on God for being unfair to the second lady. Lin Quan and Zhao Qingshan hurried over. Elder Zhao, please unseal the vitality sealing finger. Xiao Taiying turned his head. He closed fist saluted. No matter what, I have to try. Master Xiao, it's useless. Mulin quickly said. Xiao Taiying gritted his teeth. Unsealing the vitality sealing finger will lead to death, and waiting for death will also lead to death. If I don't try, I won't be satisfied. Master Xiao, Zhao Qingshan's face showed that he was in a difficult position. He could tell at once that the second lady was not going to make it. Master Xiao was trying to save a dead horse, but he really could not save the second lady. Master Xiao would definitely hate him. How could he not be angry? Mulin said, Elder Zhao, the second lady will not live past tonight. Even if she doesn't succeed, it's just one more night. It's good to try. Zhao Qingshan smiled bitterly. Elder Mulin, you can't expect me to personally send the second lady off. Sending her off is good too. Xiao Taiying gritted his teeth and said hatefully, the sooner she dies, the sooner she can be free. This broken body of hers has made her suffer so much. She should have been free long ago. Master Xiao, Zhao Qingshan shook his head, helplessly. I really have no confidence at all. Even if you have confidence now, it's useless. Mulin scoffed. It's too late. Yes. Zhao Qingshan nodded. He groaned in his heart. Even if there was no hope, why still try? He came to the bed and looked at the pale but beautiful face. It was so delicate that it made people feel pity for her. This was a face that could turn all living things upside down. But since ancient times, beautiful women often had unlucky fates. The second lady could not escape her fate either. Thinking about this, he hardened his heart. It was better to do it than not to do it. Maybe there would be a miracle. He had studied the vitality sealing finger in detail. He knew which acupuncture points to open in one breath. Scenes of inner energy rushing through the acupuncture points circulated in his mind. He stood there quietly and adjusted his breathing, adjusting his body to the best condition. Xiao Taiying and the others held their breath and looked at him motionlessly. After a while, Zhao Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was like lightning. His eyebrows were fluttering like a strong wind. His right palm lightly hit the top of Xiao Shi's head. Bang! In the midst of a muffled sound, Xiao Shi's body trembled. Then, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face became even paler. There was a faint green aura. She stopped moving and her breath gradually weakened. Uffed! Zhao Qingshan spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered backward and sat on the ground. Xiao Taiying quickly looked at Xiao Shi. Mulan also flashed to Xiao Shi's side. He checked her pulse and breath. His face was solemn. When Xiao Taiying saw his face, he knew something was wrong. Second sister, Xiao Taiying's voice was trembling. It was dry and unpleasant to hear. Mulan shook his head. Master Xiao, my condolences. Impossible. Impossible. Xiao Taiying shook his head and waved his hand. Impossible. Mulan only sighed and did not say anything. His face was solemn. Xiao Taiying went forward and touched Xiao Shi's face. It was still warm. He checked her breath, but there was no more breath. He quickly said, "It can't be?" When we left, the second lady was still fine. Although she did not have much time left, it was not the end. Its second eldest sister. Xiao Qi slowly shook her head. I can feel it. Its second eldest sister. Impossible, Chuli said in a low voice. Xiao Qi reached out her hand to hold the pine tree. She did not let her limp body slide. Chuli looked up at the sky and sighed. Could it be that man proposes, but God disposes? Xiao Qi said, there's no need to look for the thunder guiding blade anymore. Let's go back and see second eldest sister. Chuli said, I'll bring you back. Let's go, Xiao Qi said. Chuli embraced her soft body and disappeared in a flash, reappearing 2 miles away. He looked down at Xiao Qi. Can you take it? Just go. Don't worry about me, Xiao Qi said. Chuli nodded. He disappeared again and reappeared 2 miles away. He was at a loss and melancholy. He did not expect that they would be separated forever. He could not save the second lady. He blamed himself. Even if he did not have full confidence, he should have tried. He could have secretly unsealed the second lady. Why did he have to listen to Master Xiao Taiying? If he failed, this would be the end. His body flashed, and his mind was wandering. Xiao Shi's beautiful face flashed in his mind. The pain in his heart was getting worse. Xiao Qi's vision was distorted. She felt nauseous. She could only close her eyes. Even so, she could not get rid of the nausea. It was getting stronger and stronger. Finally, she could not help but pat Chu Li's shoulder. Chu Li let go of her. She bent down and vomited on the peak of a mountain. Lady Xiao, I'll leave first, Chu Li said. Xiao Qi wiped her mouth with a silk handkerchief and looked up at him. I can do it. Chu Li shook his head. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.